Welcome to the Lineman Lounge, hosted by Mike and Evo, calling their shots and being outlandish.
Breaking news from Lineman Lounge. My fantasy football team just took a huge fucking hit. And that also makes it even more likely that the Raiders are going to beat the Ravens on Monday night. Le'Veon Bell is about to be your starter. Latavius Murray is going to go there as well. Jesus, fuck my ass.
Get ready for the thickest podcast in the game. Coming to you from Hangar 6, where sleeves are optional. Strap in. The show starts right now.
Come on, Stan, bitches. This is the Lineman Lounge. I am Sleeveless Mike, the man to my right, as always, Thick Evo, and we are back after our break last week, and we have a fantastic show for you guys. I am very, very excited for today. We are going to start diving into the world of the NFL offseason. Shit is always going crazy in the NFL, and this year is going to be no different. There's going to probably be more moves, and anybody is going to expect. A lot of quarterbacks are going to change hands, where they're going to be, but we're also going to get into some draft talk, some guys that we like. That way you can start prepping. You can do your homework and tell us if you like the prospects that we like. And then when the season comes around, we'll tell you why we were right and you were wrong. But I'm very pumped, man. I've had a great day. How are you doing, Evo? How's the weekend going? I know it's a Sunday, so you actually had a little bit of weekend to get into. How's it going, man?
Man, it is basically feels like a Saturday to me because I did nothing yesterday. I just was a vegetable, sitting in bed, chilling, relaxing, getting some extra sleep in. And today it's been mostly the same so far, just kind of it, you brought up bringing up draft prep and stuff like that. I've been hard on it for over a week now, cataloging stuff. And so that's kind of what I've been doing, is just sitting around watching film on guys, taking notes on the laptop and whatnot. And then today it's like I said, I haven't done very much because right now we are in a weird weather season right now in Arizona. I know out there it's still pretty cold for you. And we keep on going, man. We keep going between the 67 to 70 degree weather here in Southern Arizona to we had insane winds last week, and today we've got insane winds and we've got snow and rain, and it's just a weird mix of stuff. So Arizona doesn't know what it's doing. So I'm just chilling inside and enjoying the warmth of the house.
We've actually had a little bit of that here as well. So it's warmed up a couple days to like mid 60s, and then the next day it's fucking 20 degrees, man. This up and down in the weather is pissing me off. I am tired of it. I want it to be either hot or cold. Just fucking make up your mind, because this up and down is not conducive with me feeling well. Got a little chest congestion, but we're gonna make it because I don't have a choice, man. I moved my family all the way out here. We gotta figure out how to deal with the weather, but I can understand.
You'll get used to it.
Yeah, at some point. I haven't had to really shovel too much snow. I bought a snowblower, so that was very clutch when we did have the snow and I had to get out of my damn driveway. But all right, sorry. U Sports, we'll talk about that real quick before we get into the rest of the show. U Sports, so Graydon finished up his wrestling season. He did qualify for the league championships by placing 4th over at the sectional. So, great job, man. First year, qualify for the league championships. Very proud of the work that you put in. But there's obviously a lot of room to grow, and we're going to keep working. He likes wrestling. We're going to keep doing it. But baseball season is right around the corner. We're getting ready to start our throwing program, get him ready for that. I actually just got Aubrey signed up for T-ball as well. She's going to be doing T-ball and soccer. She's going to be very, very busy as well. And then Lizzie is not quite at the age where she can start playing sports. So we're not there yet, but she will be there soon. But talking about Lizzie is kind of going to lead us into our guest for today. I am very, very excited to have this person on. Elizabeth was a big fan when we went to a Cleveland State women's basketball game. So we're gonna go ahead and bring her on. So joining us is going to be 5'6" senior guard from Cleveland State University, an absolute stallion on the court and a bulldog on the defensive end. let's bring in Deja Williams. All right. Well, let's hit the fucking button, maybe, Mike. There it is.
Hello.
Deja, thank you so much for being on the show. I love watching you play. Your tenacity on defense is so fun to watch, and you gained a massive fan in our little Elizabeth Baker. She was following you up and down the court, and then you were so gracious to say hello, give her a hug after the game. Thank you for that, and welcome to the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Pleasure's mine.
Absolutely. So, you are a senior guard at Cleveland State, coming off the bench. Now, obviously, a lot of people want minutes, right? Everybody wants to start. They want playing time. But you play a vital role coming off the bench. I typically see you first person coming off the bench, and you bring a defensive presence. Is that something that you always kind of modeled your game around? Is like, if I can just be tenacious on D, it will lead to other things?
Yeah. So growing up, I have an older brother. So, I kind of like to do things how he did things. And he always told me defense is something that you can always control. You can't always control how many shots you make. You can't always control, protecting the ball, But defense is something that you can always control. And so I took what he told me, and I took that to heart. And I try to go out there every day and hold my hands on defense and just get into people. It's fun to me too. I don't know. I love it.
Oh, I can see. I can see by the way you play that you love it. It's so impressive, and there's constantly a smile on your face. You're right up in somebody's face, and you're just smiling at him like, I'm gonna fucking cook you right now.
I mean, that's what my brother did to me. So I'm just returning the favor to everybody else.
It always feels like
that.
Defensive play in sports. There's like almost a little like there's a cockiness to offense, but with defense, it's like that swagger of like, I'm going to get one over on you. I don't know, taking it to the other person like that. It's a different sort of mindset, which is always, I love defense on sports. I love to playing defense in sports because like you said, offense, you may or may not get, your chance to shoot, but defense, you're always out there taking it to them. So that's awesome.
All right. Well, so I want to kind of ask. So for me, I was a college athlete the first time I went to college. This time around, I am too fat and old to even think about playing a sport. But first time around, I went to college and I was on a football scholarship. And for me, college was very difficult the first time around. And I had a really hard time working on my school sport balance. What has that been like for you? You've done this for quite a few years now. What is your school sport balance like? I know for me, like I couldn't take classes at certain times because practice schedules conflicted. Is that something that you guys still deal with? And kind of walk us through what the daily life of a college athlete.
Yeah, so honestly, it's changed tremendously, like from my freshman year and then now to COVID, because I feel like my freshman year was a lot harder because all my classes were in person, and so I had a lot more balancing to do. But when COVID came around, it was kind of easier to like balance it out because all your classes were online, so you can kind of like do the work whenever you were free. And so I think it has been a little bit easier. But I mean, going into my senior year and like with basketball being the length of season that it is, I'm missing so much class. So I feel like I'm constantly playing like catch up. But I feel like if like the program's mindset is student athlete and they understand that the student part comes first, then it's a lot easier. So here it's pretty much a lot easier for me to like do my catching up and communicate with my professors because they understand that like I'm a student athlete. So like the student part will always come first. So it's easier to work around that. So like I can go to my coach and say like I have an exam at this time, or I have homework at this time, and they're very much understandable. So I think that's one thing that positive thing that I can take away from this is that it just depends on the program you're in and their mindset on the student athlete part. But if they work around with you, then it's pretty easy to stay catching up and stay focused on everything. So yeah, it's been a pretty easy kind of like transition, especially since COVID. So,
and so you talked a little bit earlier about your brother, playing basketball and stuff with him growing up. I'm interested to know, like, what was your journey from like growing up? Were you always playing basketball from the get-go, and then I'm assuming into high school and everything? And what was your journey? You know, I believe you played Cal State Northridge before moving to Cleveland State. So what was your journey like, and when did you kind of know that you had an opportunity to play some college ball, you know, after high school? Because that's not something that a lot of athletes in high school, you know, everyone gets a chance in high school, but not everyone's going to be good enough or get that opportunity to play in college. So what was that all like?
Yeah. So like, it was kind of funny because you were talking about like your kids and playing sports and stuff. And I remember when I was younger, my parents put me in all different types of sports. Like I was playing basketball, soccer, softball. I cheered for my brother. I did all different types of sports. They kind of wanted me to like choose whatever route I wanted to take. So yeah. So growing up, I played, like I said, basketball, softball, and soccer. And I had to kind of slow down after I had hip surgery because like my bones slipped out of place because they said I was like doing too much movement. So I had to kind of like slow down and like think about like what sport I really wanted to take seriously and what sport I kind of like just play for fun. And so it was between basketball and softball because my dad, he don't want to admit it, but he wanted me to be a softball player. So I stuck to basketball and softball. And in high school, I ended up playing basketball and softball. And I actually thought about being on double scholarship in Cal State Northridge to play basketball and softball. But once I got to college, I kind of realized like my focus and my love for basketball beats softball hands down. So I kind of chose to stick to basketball, and it's been like that ever since.
Very cool. And then what ended up bringing you from Cal State Northridge out here to Cleveland State? Was that because of COVID stuff, or where did that idea to transfer come from?
Yeah, so when I committed to Cal State Northridge, my goal was to stay there for all 4 years. But COVID came around and my team we all ended up opting out. And so basically that meant like we all chose not to play the whole season because we only had like 7 or 8 people that were able to be there because of COVID. So we all chose that it would be best for our bodies and for our mental and for our physical to just like not play. But like I'm a competitor, so you know I want to play regardless. You know, I don't care if it's 4 of us. I just want to go out there and compete and play and have fun. So I decided to transfer, and I transferred with the idea in mind that I was going to be able to play right away because my team obviously wasn't competing for that season. So I was told that if I were to transfer that I would be able to play right away. But when I got here, things didn't like work out the way that we wanted to. But I don't know. I think it was a blessing in disguise because I feel like everything happens for a reason. So that happened because I was supposed to be here. And, you know, now we're here and we're having a very successful season. So, you know, I don't have no regrets with anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll admittedly say, like, I am not as into college sports and track and stuff, but I know Mike has been keeping us all up to date with the Cleveland State athletics, especially with the women's basketball team, because, you know, he's gotten to, you know, call a couple of your games and stuff like that. So it's definitely gotten me more involved. I know that, you know, we've got fans and people who watch the show spread from Arizona, Minnesota, Cleveland, all over the US and stuff like that. And even some people now overseas. So they're all getting, you know, their eyes open to the Cleveland State women's basketball team. So it's really cool what you guys are doing out there, and understand you guys have had a pretty good year.
Yeah, very good year. We'll get to a little bit of that, but I did want to ask, because you said you left California, Northridge, and that was right around the time that the NIL started to become kind of a thing, and it really started out in California.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much, if at all, it has, but has NIL that you have seen made any difference in, you know, some of the recruiting or the way you guys would, you know, show and present things on social media with the possibility of maybe some NIL deals coming? Because, I mean, when I was a college athlete, the mere conversation of possibly being paid, you were going to get suspended. Now the college landscape has drastically changed. So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on what NIL has done, or if you have seen any kind of movement in that.
I mean, I love it. I feel like NIL has definitely boosted up, especially in women's athletics. It's kind of given us a platform to show our our talents and like just to show who we are as women in the sports industry. And I think it's kind of grown the women's sports in general platform. So I love it. I mean, I love it. I'm all for it. But I do feel like in its beginning stages, it's kind of hard because like the rules and regulations aren't really very clear yet. Like everybody's kind of like walking on glass around that. But I feel like within the next 4 years, it's gonna skyrocket, and I think it's only positives in my opinion.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Now let's dive into the season. You guys have been fantastic this year. It's been an honor to watch and call your games. But things did not necessarily end the way that Cleveland State wanted it to end. You guys drop a game to Green Bay late in the season. They are going to go in as the number 1 seed for the Horizon League tournament. You guys are going in as the number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the 1 seed is great, but all of these games are taking place in Indianapolis. Do you feel that it makes a huge difference between 1 and 2? And what is your guys' mindset going into the tournament, knowing that Green Bay was able to clip you guys a couple times this year?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like with the Horizon League, the way it is now, 1 through 10 are all solid teams, and on any night could be any other team. So I really don't think the seeding has a huge really advantage on like being first or second or third or fourth, because I feel like 1 through 10, all teams can beat any team on any given night. So yeah, I mean that's my take on it. And the way our bracket is set up, it's not a regular bracket. It's the highest seed plays the lowest seed, the lowest remaining seed. So like I said, I feel like this league, the way it is, and the how fierce the competition is, it really doesn't matter.
All right.
But I mean, we're just focused on playing the team in front of us. You know, we're not focused on who we beat, who we lost to, none of that, because at the end of the day, it's one game, and it's the game that's you about to play. So we just focus on the next team on the list, to be honest.
And hey, maybe it can be used as like an underdog sort of mentality sort of thing. Because
for sure,
any successful teams that I've been on, even if we're successful going into like the playoffs, you know, a 1 seed or something like that, it's still nice to kind of have that like, oh, people aren't like believing us or we're an underdog or something like that. That can bring a lot of really good motivation to it. So
for sure. Yeah.
So the seeding doesn't matter, but I imagine that you and all the other women on that team, they want another shot at Green Bay. You want to run into them in the championship with a chance to finally take them down and lock up that guaranteed automatic bid to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunate stuff that we couldn't control happened, like we have injuries and we're dealing with a whole different types of stuff on our team. But I mean, who doesn't want to be a team that beat you? You know,
absolutely.
So, I mean, it would be a given. I mean, it would be a bonus for us to get them in the championship. But like I said, who knows if we're gonna make it? Who knows if they're gonna make it? Like nothing is guaranteed within this league, so we're just focused on the next team.
All right, and the next team. We don't know who the next team is yet, do we? Because that is going to take the was that quarterfinal game
on Tuesday, I think. Yeah,
on Tuesday, and then you guys will figure out the opponent, and then you will play them on Thursday night.
Yeah.
So I will not be on the game call. However, I am going to hang around the campus. I'm going to stay, watch the game. I'm going to try to snag one of those courtside seats and just be loud as all fuck for you guys, especially since we get the host at the Wolstein Center. So I'm
that's
very
so
pumped.
Cool. Yeah, that's so cool. And it's a doubleheader, so our men play right after us. So that's what more could you ask for? A lot of basketball.
Yeah, it's a lot of basketball, and it's good basketball. God.
Hi.
Come here, girls.
Oh, got the visitors in.
Hi.
She's saying hi here.
You guys are so cute. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing? Hi. They're so cute.
She says you guys are adorable, by the way.
Thank you.
And that's got to be one of the best parts about being, you know, an athlete at your level is you get to make an impact in kids' lives, especially little girls' lives with, you know, women's athletics and stuff like that. I mean, I can only imagine how awesome that has to be as far as an experience and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Because I grew up watching college basketball. So, like, I would see people that look like me and that will give me the motivation, like, oh, I can do this. So for me to be that person for other little girls out there, it's a blessing. It just puts a smile on my face every day.
That's awesome.
It's a great outlook as well, because you guys have the ability to affect the lives of young girls. I remember, women's sports was not a big facet of my life as a young athlete, young man. We didn't see it as much. Now women are getting a much bigger platform, and your guys' ability to kind of show and guide the younger generation is truly, truly special. So thank you for saying hello. And
of course, they put a smile on my face.
All right. Well, Evo, you got any other questions for Deja before we get a quick football take from her, and we'll let her get out of here, because I know she's got stuff she's got to do. She's got homework and all that. Because I know I got homework.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are you going to school for right now, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah. So I'm majoring in psychology, and I'm minoring in communications, and I don't necessarily know exactly what I want to do with it, but I know that I want to give back, and I want to help and teach younger kids. I might go into the field of coaching or school counseling or something around those lines, but I know I definitely want to give back, because I was very fortunate to have people to give to me, and I just want to give back to others.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great outlook. And listen, I'm going to be rooting for you on the court, and then as soon as you're done off the court, I'm rooting for you as well, no matter where you go, what you do with your life.
Thank you.
It has been fantastic to have an opportunity to talk to you and, get to know you and watch this team. So I'm 100% in your corner.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, before we let you go, you got a couple minutes still.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right. We're going to start diving into some of the NFL, and I know you're not a huge football fan. We talked a little bit before the show, but we're going to do a little bit of a recap of the Super Bowl. I know that you watched the Super Bowl a little bit, maybe a little different portion than we watched, but
I mean, you think I didn't watch Riri?
I mean, she looks good, especially being pregnant, man. I was so impressed.
Like,
God damn, she moves way better than I do. And but so what was your take on the Super Bowl? Did you enjoy watching the game? And what were your thoughts on Rihanna's halftime show? I know a lot of people enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I mean, growing up, me and my mom and my brother and my dad, we always used to go out on Super Bowl. Me and my mom had no idea what was going on, so we would watch the Super Bowl for the commercials and for the halftime show. And I want to say this year the commercials, they disappointed me. I'm not gonna lie. It was
they fell flat a little bit. They definitely fell flat.
Yeah, they fell very flat. I was disappointed. But the halftime show, it was really good. It was really good. I thought she was gonna bring out a guest, and I was waiting for something else to happen. But when I look back on it, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah.
And being a Long Beach girl, we talked too about last year's Super Bowl and halftime show. In comparison to that one versus this one, which was better, this year or last year?
Last year, of course, because that's my home city. So to see all those artists from my whole town, it was amazing. And then LA took the dub, so that's all I could ask for.
Absolutely.
There we go. All right. So LA was not in it this year. They had a lot of struggles throughout the season, but it turned out to be a really, really good game. Evo and I did not pick it correctly. We were very close. We had a 3-point game, but with a different winner. We thought Eagles were going to take it. The Chiefs were able to come out victorious. But yeah, it was Evo. Your thoughts on the game? We'll get a little bit more into this once we let Deja go, but because I don't want to steal too much of her time. Overall, it was a damn good Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's what you kind of want. You want a little bit more of a high scoring effort. As much as we like defense, defensive games are a little bit less exciting to the more casual fan, which the Super Bowl tends to be a more casual experience for a lot of people. People who don't watch football will end up watching that game just because it's so exciting, and the commercials and the halftime show and everything is, a huge production. But really, as far as the game went, being as high scoring and close down to the end is that sort of drama that you like to see in that sort of a game. Obviously, questionable calls maybe at the end of the game that a lot of people wanted to get into, but overall it was really, really fun game. good storylines, good drama, and that's really all you can ask for. You just don't want to see one of those blowout games unless you're a fan of that particular team that's winning. So, good game overall. Really happy with it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the game, man. It did not turn out the way I wanted. I had some money on a lot of things that did not necessarily go my way. Thank you, legal gambling in the state of Ohio. Deja, don't do that. You'll get in trouble. But yeah, it was overall it was a good game. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But I just want to say, Deja, thank you very much. It was an honor to have you on the show. Hopefully, we can have you back.
Oh yeah, I would love to.
Once you guys are hoisting some hardware up in the Wolstein after winning the Horizon League. Even if you don't, we'll definitely fucking have you back on because you were fantastic. So
I would love to. Thank you. The pleasure was all mine. This was so fun.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time. Tell your friends, tell all the other girls that, hey, if they want to come on the show, we are more than willing and very happy to have them as well.
Of course.
All right, guys. Well, Deja, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Deja.
Oh, actually before we go, before we go, tell all of the people watching where they can go and check out Deja Williams, go interact with Deja, and see all the shit that you're up to.
Because you're gonna have some more fans now. Some people that are gonna want to be following you in your story. So
yeah. So my Instagram is Deja Williams 0, and then my Twitter is Deja Hoop 7. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So if you're not following Deja on Instagram or on Twitter, go check her out on those two platforms. Shout her out, say, hey, you're awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. And then, but
thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks. We'll talk to you later, Deja.
Bye.
Bye, Deja.
Bye.
Oh, no, removed. There we go. She did it herself, but that was good, man. That was our first run with a current athlete interview. I felt like it went pretty well. And obviously she's fantastic. Her ability to communicate exactly what she wants, and she's just such a nice person. I mean, when Lizzie went up to try to give her a hug, she was just open arms. So she is awesome, and I'm definitely rooting for her.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the type of student athlete type of situation that you love to see, where, it's not just about the sports, which especially when you get into some of the high level D1 athletics and stuff like that, it is just about the sports and stuff like that. And you can see Deja's obviously a really good person and wanting to give back. She's talking about her future, just wants to be able to find ways to give back, and already being able to do that and use the platform that she has to influence, young girls and women, like your daughters. It's a great thing to see.
Absolutely. And her thought process on, being a student first, she's there to do a job, is great, because I don't know about you, but for me as a young athlete, I remember getting this speech in high school, which is a wild fucking thing to say that this was happening in high school. But our coaches, they would give us a speech like at the start of every fucking year. Like, all right, guys, listen, we need you to perform well, but you're a student first, right? And they would tell us, listen, you are a student first and an athlete second, because the words have to come out a certain way. However, that is not necessarily where the priority always is. When you play at a bigger program or you're trying to compete for titles, there is a thought process at times that I need you to be 100% committed to this, and all the other things are just part of the experience. So her outlook on that, and the fact that she is committed to, getting her degree. I mean, she is a senior this year, but she has another year of eligibility. She's well on track to go out and be a professional in another facet other than basketball. I hope she keeps playing, and I hope she blows up. I'd love to have her in the WNBA and bring her on again. I could bring her on anytime, because just the way she carries herself is so special. And you don't see that with a ton of younger people, and college athletes. Sometimes they are a certain way, but she's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. But, all right.
Let's do this. Are we ready to start diving into the fucking NFL? Because my goodness, there has been some shit going on. I do want to talk about the Super Bowl some more, specifically the call that ended the game.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, we took our little break over the last week or so, which allowed a lot of things to, kind of simmer, kind of marinate a little bit, which is nice because now we can really start to get into it. And we got a jam-packed next couple months. And that's the beauty of the NFL is that Super Bowl ends, then you kick right into the offseason. And that's how I was talking with some people at work about it this week. And I was like, man, are you ready for the combine this next week?
You guys ready for the fucking
NFL? Already the
NFL?
combine? And they're like, it's time already. I was like, yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've been studying because I have.
Yep. You get a 1 week hiatus from everything, and then after that, it's full tilt right back into the NFL because it's a absolute machine. Does not stop. But we're gonna talk. I want to talk about the play at the end of the game. So we're watching the game. I got a lot of bets going. And I'm emotionally invested because my money is invested. And then we get the call, the hold call at the end of the game on Juju. In the moment we were talking, I texted you, like, man, that is not a hold. It looks like hand fighting out of the break to me. And then, about 4 days later, we get the reverse shot where you can see the backside of the route and you can very clearly see the hook on the back plate of the shoulder pads. It was a hold. It sucks that it was a hold. It sucked that it got called right there. But the initial look, it doesn't necessarily look like a hold to me until you see the reverse view, which is exactly where the hell the referee was standing. So it sucks in that call. But
I'm still torn on it because if you're looking at the still images and whatnot of that play, it looks worse than it did. Whether it's live action or slow-mo. And it seemed like, and you're hearing this from a lot of other players and stuff like that, is that the way that the game was being called, that sort of stuff was being generally allowed. Like there was a lot more hand fighting action, stuff like that, contact that was being allowed. And it's something that we've seen with NFL officiating where they will call a game one way until it gets
the
down
last
to the
2
end of the
fucking
game.
minutes.
And then the refs really start to get their buttholes puckering and worried about, like, okay, we have to make calls like very exact. By the letter of the rule, yes, it was a penalty.
Hold, yeah. Wasn't called all game though, man. Like that's tough.
I like to see consistency. And that's the thing that coaches and players talk about is, we know this officiating crew likes to call this sort of penalty more often. That's part of the pregame scouting. The players know that going into the game, they will play a different brand of football based off of that. And they'll adjust in game as well to if the refs are starting to call something more than they were before. So they were playing a bang bang version of football out there. And did that contact really affect that individual play? I don't feel like it did. I don't feel like it was the difference between a catch being made or not.
I don't think he catches that anyways, based on where that ball ends up in his route, because he didn't slow him down that much, in my opinion.
Now, I can't remember the defender, his name, who was called against. But obviously, he was
Twitter knows because Twitter went apeshit with the back and forth because Juju decided he was going to do old school Juju things and go ahead and post some not nice things on Valentine's Day about "I'll hold you when it matters." I don't know if you saw the tweet.
Yeah, you know what? It was a very classy move by him to come out, especially when he is probably at one of his lowest moments as a professional athlete.
Absolutely.
To come out and say it was a hold. I was hoping they wouldn't call it type thing. Classy move. But and again, by the letter of the rule, it was a penalty. It's just something that hadn't been called all game. And as a fan watching the game, I talked earlier about how the game was good. It was high scoring, lots of drama and stuff like that. And it felt like that took a lot of the drama out of the end of the game, because after that, it all became very mundane. We knew exactly what was going to happen, up to the Jerick McKinnon possibly could have scored a touchdown and decided to, slide.
Brilliant play.
Absolutely. And that's an awareness that a lot of players don't necessarily have. That's the only thing that I really feel like could have changed the situation, other than Jalen Hurts having better arm strength towards the end of the game. And
that
a magic
was.
play
I
happening.
don't understand what happened with that throw. There's no way that's his ball. He just threw it bad. Like it came out of the hand wrong.
Yeah.
There's no way that's his arm. I've
Right.
seen him throw some darts.
Mm-hmm. But other than that, I mean, it was a really good game. It kind of sucked. I was bummed because of that play, because I was like, I want to see like this last second sort of drama happen.
Yep.
And are the Eagles going to get a chance to get this ball back and make this game go further? So I understand the issue that Eagles fans had with that play. Maybe they're not. I mean, Eagles fans are Eagles fans. We know that they're rambunctious about stuff. We'll say that to keep it light. But they have a reason to be upset, but they also need to take a step back and be like, okay, yes, this was a penalty, but with a caveat, like I am, like it wasn't being called all game. You've got a reason to say like you should have let him just keep playing. But congratulations to the Chiefs. I mean, that was one of the storylines was Mahomes and his leg going into the game, and then you see him get injured again before half, and he was just getting shoved all sorts of black water
and fucking everything that he could possibly have. He's like, fuck this leg, shoot me up and let me go, and then we'll deal with it in the offseason.
Yeah, and it just continues that legacy of Mahomes on the race to see if he can try to match what Tom Brady's done in his career, which he's got a pretty good jump on it so far.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a conversation later in Pat's career. Is it Pat or is it Brady that's the GOAT? I don't see a reason why that team is going to slow down other than maybe they run into some cap issues, but also the way the cap is growing every fucking year now with the new TV deal, that may not become that big of an issue. That his contract might not be a problem. Travis Kelce's contract might not be a problem. So they could really do this for quite a while. Travis Kelce is still in his prime. Pat is at the very beginning of his prime. Like we have seen him absolutely ball out since he's basically took over as a starter, but there were still learning moments that Pat had. I think right now he's got it all down. He just has to continue to put it all together.
Yeah. And I think that it's, you talk about that team not slowing down. It's showing the NFL what a good construction of a team can be. Obviously, when we're talking about quarterback contracts and them getting inflated and stuff like that, very shortly, Pat Mahomes' deal, which was, incredible at the time, is going to seem like a bargain.
Yeah, 10-year fucking $500 million. We're like, oh my God, how is this ever going to work? And now we're talking about contracts that are, I mean, you got the Deshaun Watson, 230. Lamar Jackson does not have a contract yet, but he has fucking made demands that are better than what Deshaun Watson's contract are. Pat Mahomes' deal is going to look like a fucking bargain here in a couple of years.
I mean, when you have Danny Dimes coming out, and I guess there's some question about the request now, but the 40 to 45 million a year for, I mean, he had a good year last year.
Nah, not that fucking good.
Not that good. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I posted on the socials, on the Lineman Lounge, the meme that I like was that he didn't ask for 40 to 45. He asked for 4 to 5 million, but Dable didn't understand him because he was pounding down some fettuccine. Couldn't really hear over the smacking, which makes more sense to me. I mean, don't get me wrong.
45.
It's Danny Dimes showed a better brand of football than he showed so far under Dable.
Drastic improvement over the year prior. And
the thing is that if you break down his stats, some of them were better, some of them were okay. But if you're just doing a litmus test of Danny Dimes in his first several years to last year, it looks like an improvement. He was able to increase his play to that of an average quarterback, maybe average plus in some games.
Yeah, so he's somewhere in that. He played it somewhere in that 15 to 25 range.
And and credit to him, he was doing it without a wide receiver core, without great passing options. So there's room for improvement there, but I think we are going to start really getting into a Kirk Cousins style conversation. Like he is Dollar Tree Kirk Cousins, and he's going to be looking for big money because he's going to be able to show that he can run an NFL offense. He can play a safe brand of football within his lane, but he's never going to be anything special, spectacular. And are you willing to spend, top 10 style money on a guy like that, where you might be condemning your team to being average, barely making the playoffs every year and not a whole lot else? And that's the scary thing for me. And for the Giants, it makes sense to bring him back, just not on that contract. And guess what?
You've franchise him,
tag, which will save you $10+ million on his.
Yeah, fucking franchise him, because they're not using the franchise on Saquon Barkley. They've come out and said as much. They're not going to do it.
And they've offered money to Saquon.
Yeah, Saquon is asking for way more. He's looking for $12.5 million annual value, and I don't think there's any way he's getting it. I think they've said as much as well.
Yeah, they have. They basically they've offered him stuff and put it on the table and said, take it or leave it. The thing with Saquon's contract that I keep on seeing is that they are offering him good money, not fantastic like what he wants money, and that it is mirroring very much your guy Nick Chubb's contract, where like the first year he's making like $4 million basically against the cap, and that makes a lot more sense. And the thing with Saquon is we obviously know he can be one of the top backs in the league. But hasn't done it because of injury.
Yes.
And
he's a running back, and that is a problem.
Yeah, it's probably an outlier year for him, to be unfortunately fair about it. Like, he's had a lot of injury issues, and you have to expect that going forward, especially at a position like running back where you are just taking a beating all the time.
Yeah.
It's just
I don't understand. I don't understand why he's I understand why he's asking for that much, because he fucking wants that much. If you're talking about a business sense, he's not getting that, and it could potentially open up the door for him to leave.
Yeah, and I expect him to probably leave. If he wanted to stay with the Giants, it would be probably at a discount to himself. And that's the other thing is, like, again, running backs, you have one opportunity to make a big contract usually in this league, because after that, like,
you only get one.
It'll be over. So
you only get one depending on the length of it.
Yeah. But we'll just assume this is his one chance to get it. And so with that in mind, I say go out and get your bag, Saquon.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Like, it doesn't make sense to do a discount for the Giants just because they drafted you and everything.
Nope.
As much as I would love to see players do that, for that position, it just doesn't make financial sense for his future. So he might as well go out and get it somewhere. And there's going to be a lot of teams vying for, what he brings, because if you're a team that's like a player or so away, or you already have a good competent passing offense and you just want some more run game with a receiving option, because he's a decent receiver out of the backfield, if he wants to jump over to the Bills or something like that, I'm sure that they want to do it.
He makes the fucking Bills so much better. We talked about this. To me, a similar comp, different style, but they can do similar things, is a Kareem Hunt and a Saquon Barkley. They are very similar in the things that they can do. And we were pounding the table. If the Bills want to make a true run, they need to go out and get it back. And we were saying, Kareem Hunt was the perfect guy for them to go get. If Saquon ends up on the market, they should absolutely be in play for that. I think you can still do a Kareem Hunt and get him at a discount as compared to what you're going to get Saquon Barkley. But there are plenty of teams that will be suitors for Saquon. I mean, you're going to look at least 10 fucking teams, if not more.
I think 7 to 10 teams are going to be in the conversation with him, and that's going to drive his price and value up, which is, again, individually just looking at the player and the position that's good for him.
Right. So I do always worry about a big contract for running backs. We saw it with Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley got that massive contract, was cut 2 years later. We get Christian McCaffrey. He's still on the same contract, but not with the same team. He gets shipped out, goes to the 49ers. Anytime you're a running back and you sign that big contract, you had still better have all of the juice left if you expect to play out that entire contract in the city that you are currently signed that fucking contract in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you get cut or you get traded. That is what happens with these big running back contracts. So I hope Saquon does go out and get his bag. I am always team player. I am never team rich white guy trying to save fucking pennies. but I think what he's asking for may be a little bit more than what I would expect him to get, because he's talking Christian McCaffrey money.
Yeah, I think he'll get it. You're gonna have teams that are gonna overpay, especially with the cap going up. You're gonna have teams that will overpay. The structuring of it will be obviously weird, different. Teams might want, injury guarantees of some sort to be set up differently. But I think that when you're talking about how talented he is and can be when he's on the field, someone I think will end up giving it to him, especially with as many teams that are going to be in play as there is.
Who really needs that? Who really needs him to generate that rushing side of the ball? Who has a chance to compete? Because you're not going to sign Saquon. Well, I mean, we've seen it in the past, like the Jets go out and they sign a Le'Veon Bell with the hopes that he's going to help that team. But what team says, you know what we really need is a very strong running game, and Saquon is our guy? I think there will be teams in play, but where does it make the most sense? I don't know right now, especially because there are some really good fucking backs coming out in this draft. Like Bijan Robinson might be one of the best backs I've ever seen as a draft prospect.
Yeah, and that's when we get into our draft breakdowns and stuff like that, we'll definitely get deep into it. But, when Saquon came out, he was talked about as being the best running back prospect that we've seen since Adrian Peterson. Bijan, for me, is somewhere in between the two. Like, I
Bijan is a fucking
Adrian
stud.
Peterson when he was coming out, because I was really hoping my Vikings would get him. Sure enough, we did. And to me, that sort of film was incredible, maybe the best I've ever seen. Saquon's fantastic film as well. In watching Bijan, it is a different brand of football between Adrian and Saquon, but Bijan he's special. He's special. One of the best that I've seen. Now, as far as what makes sense for where he wants to go, it's tough. There's a lot of spots. I mean, we brought the Bills. I don't think that's going to be an option. I honestly just don't feel like that's going to be the way that they're going to go. But you've got, I've seen Bears, Miami, Falcons, Broncos. I've seen a lot of these teams floated.
Miami sounds like a fit just because they don't necessarily have a lead back, and that would help them protect Tua. I like that idea. I don't think Denver makes sense, though.
With Javonte there, it doesn't to me either. But these are team names that have just been floated around, and I think that there's a lot of good options. If any one of those teams brings them in, it's an upgrade, and I don't think that'll be like, oh, this is a bad signing necessarily. It makes the team better immediately, but there's a lot of pros and cons to anywhere that he's going to go. The biggest con being injury prone and big contract. But like you said, there's a lot of good running backs coming out. I think a lot of teams are taking a step back right now and looking at that Super Bowl. You've got the Eagles, who have Miles Sanders and a couple other guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Miles Sanders, I believe, was a second-round pick, maybe.
And Miles Sanders barely played in the Super Bowl because of the early fumble.
Mm-hmm. But
so you can create a
he's
good back in the aggregate with multiple guys.
Yeah, it's the same thing for the Chiefs. Okay, so they went out and got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Has turned out not to be special. You've got a Jerick McKinnon, who originally drafted by the Vikings as a mid-round pick, and Isaiah Pacheco, who's a seventh rounder. You're able to build very competent running back rooms with guys that have different skill sets and do different things very well on a budget. And you're not having to spend the money or the draft capital to have these sorts of players. And I think NFL teams are going to be looking at that and saying, okay, we can model this easily, because when you get to those later round draft picks, you're not looking at a guy who does everything well. You're looking at a guy that might do one thing really good and other things not so good, but you're able to not pay that guy a huge amount of money and bring him in as part of a room. And I think so my Vikings are in a situation right now where we are $24 million over the cap. We have to make some moves. It's the third worst cap situation in the league. We can easily get well above or under the cap with like 3 or 4 moves. One of them being Dalvin Cook. I love Dalvin Cook. I think his time is over with the Vikings. They will trade him or release him because there's like an $8 million savings, and he's going to be getting paid like $14 million.
Is that a post June 1 saves him the 8? No, prior. Wow.
Yeah. And that's just from a cut. If we're able to trade him at this point for anywhere between like a 3rd and 5th round pick, it's an option that makes sense because we've already got Alexander Madison, also a free agent this year. I don't expect him to necessarily come back, though. If we get rid of Dalvin, it's an option if we're able to bring Madison back on like a $4 to $5 million deal. But even then, we've got 2 other backs on the team that they like what they bring. They're not complete players. So you go out in the draft and you get one more guy in a mid round that rounds out that backfield. Then all of a sudden your running back room goes from being like a total of like 18 mil per year down to like 3 mil per year. And you're getting roughly the same sort of outcome from it. And so I think that's the way that a lot of NFL teams are going to look, and it could hurt running back values in free agency because a lot of teams are going to say, hey, this draft, it's got 2 guys, maybe, obviously Bijan is a 1st round option, and Jamar Gibbs is considered like the 2nd best back in this draft because he runs like Dalvin Cook, receives like Kamara. That's the comp that keeps on getting put out there. But he's probably still a 2nd rounder. And Bijan himself is being talked about as a late 1st round pick just because running backs
the value is not there. Yeah, the value is not there in the 1st round.
So you have that sort of tier of player, and then the next tier down are guys that are previously in the NFL 1st round picks. 10 years ago, some of these guys are 1st round picks, early 2nd round picks, things like that. But these are guys now that can be had in rounds 2 through 6, and they still will be competent, good starters for you in the league at a heavy discount as far as draft capital. Teams are going to look at that and say, okay, we might try to offer some guys in free agency this, and they're not willing to take it. Cool, we'll take one in the draft. It's worked out for a lot of teams. We can build this up, and I think that's just the way the NFL is going to be going with it.
Yeah.
So
if you're asking for the amount of money he's asking for, you have to be on a generational talent Hall of Fame track to think that you're going to get it. And I don't think Saquon is there. He has the talent. He has the ability, but injuries are a major, major concern. And I think teams, rightfully so, which sucks because I was a running back, they devalue them because you can get a competent guy in the 3rd. And then if you really want to, you can take another guy in the fucking 7th and you can recreate a similar room to the guys that we just saw in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. But with that kind of in mind, real quick programming note here. So Mike and I have a bit of a schedule going of what we're going to be looking at here between now and the NFL draft on April 27th. We're going to have a graphic posted up that'll be put on the social media page and stuff like that for you all to be able to see, but I'm just going to kind of go through it right now. So today, after talking to Deja, and we're going to talk a little bit more, Super Bowl, some other offseason notes, some predictions of what's going to be happening this offseason specifically for our teams. I know I kind of got into that a little bit with the Dalvin Cook stuff. We'll also talk about, we got the combine starting next week. That quick, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been getting pretty deep in the nitty gritty of these prospects. I've got, like I said, told Mike earlier, I got 27 names on a little note in my iPhone here of guys that I have been watching. That was my stepping off point, and I probably got double, if not more than that, of guys that I've already done kind of review on. So I'm excited to look forward to some of these guys in the combine. But going forward, so these are all Sunday, if we have Sunday shows, and the dates can kind of move around a little bit. But what we're going to be looking at is around March 5th. We'll be doing a post-combine kind of review, maybe a quick little mock draft, like a 1st round or something between Mike and I of the things that we saw on the combine and starting to get into those reviews of players. 12 March is going to be our free agency primer episode where we're talking about a lot of these free agents because that's when free agency starts. I believe the tampering period starts 3 days before March 15th, new league year.
72 hours prior.
So that Monday, the 13th, will be tampering period of time. And that's when things really start kicking off. And we see where these teams are going to be moving, especially with new head coaches, new styles of offenses and defenses, things like that with new coaches coming in. So that'll be really fun. March 19th will be our first show after free agency is open. So we'll start to review some of these new free agents that have been picked up, where they went, how we think the fits are, if we thought people got overpaid, which absolutely
guaranteed to happen. Yeah.
And then we're going to start after that, really getting into our deep dives on rookie players, guys that are going to be going in the draft. So March 26th timeframe, we will be going over a lot of our skill positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver. April 2nd, going offensive line, tight end groupings. April 9th, defensive line, edge players, things like that. 16th, linebackers, defensive backs. And then April 23rd is going to kind of be our final show, probably before that draft on April 27th. So we're going to try to get in some individual mock drafts, some group mock drafts. We'll see if we can get some more people on the show like we've done in years past, and have full on round one mock drafts with some guests. We got the sounds ready to go for it.
Oh yeah.
So
soundboard is hooked up.
We drafting, because who doesn't love good mock drafts? And if you're not already doing mock drafts, if you're a big football fan, you want to do mock drafts, PFF provides a great mock draft simulator. You can go just 1 round, 2 rounds, all the way to 7-round mock draft. You can do trades in it. It's a lot of fun to do that. Like I've been doing 2 to 3 per night. Honestly, it's just something that I'll do with a show on in the background on my phone. So that's kind of what we're looking for going forward here in the future. And today, with the combine coming up, I'm going to throw out some names. I know Mike's got some names of people that we've looked at. Obviously, we're very early in the process, but some names, if you haven't looked at these rookies that are going to be coming into the league, some guys that maybe you can recognize the name if you hear them talked about, some guys that you can kind of watch for in the combine, things like that. But we can kind of get into that a little bit later. So other offseason news stuff that is starting to happen around the NFL. Aaron Rodgers has come out of his hermit hole, apparently.
Yeah, he sure has.
We haven't heard anything yet about.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't gonna fucking happen. You asked me like, man, I hope Aaron makes his fucking decision before the show, and I said, "There's no way. He's a diva. This is gonna be a little bit of a process, I think."
So prior to going into his darkness retreat or whatever, he's been playing a lot of golf and stuff like that, still doing the McAfee show, and he said on the McAfee show that he's not gonna string this out for his sake, for the Packers' sake, for any other team's sake. He's not going to string it out, that he'll make his decision sometime relatively quick after his darkness retreat. How soon afterwards, we don't know. He also said that he wasn't going to break the news on the McAfee show or anything like that, which makes sense, because, actually it doesn't. He likes to have,
he loves Pat and Aaron,
but,
so.
I would expect that, we've got, I believe the franchise tag deadline is March 7th. And again, the combine is going on this week here. Combine is not just for scouting players, but it's when all those NFL GMs, owners, and head coaches are all mingling. They're going out to the steak restaurants afterwards and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of the deals happen for trades and things like that. And meeting with agents, free agency contracts, that's probably the illegal tampering period, really. That's when it really starts for these players and teams. I would expect that he hopefully will have told the Packers what his plan is before the start of the combine, which again is next week, I believe Monday, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or it's this week because it is Sunday, huh? So if he has made his decision, the team is going to want to know now. So that way, if he says, hey, I want to keep playing, but I'm not playing here in Green Bay, they can start talking. His agent can talk. The team can talk with other prospective landing options like the Jets, the Raiders, somewhere like that. But I don't know. You said that he's a bit of a diva and you think he wants to string it out a little bit.
I do think he will string it out a little bit. Because I don't think that he is fully set in his mind what he wants to do. I really don't. I think he is fighting the idea of retirement because he still has some juice. It didn't necessarily show this year, but if you put him on a team with some young, really talented wide receivers or a guy he knows in Devontae Adams, I think that intrigues him. And is a possibility to keep him playing to go and help create a legacy somewhere else. So I don't know that it's going to be as quick as people are hoping for. That feels like an Aaron Rodgers thing to do, is kind of hold all the cards and then you'll lay one down at a time. As like, we'll hear something, and then we'll hear another thing, and then we'll be able to start to put the pieces together. But do I think he comes up right out and says, all right, I'm announcing my retirement? I don't think so. It doesn't feel like an Aaron Rodgers move.
So my gut tells me that he's going to come out of this and say that he wants to play again. But that I think the relationship with the Packers is pretty much over.
Yeah, personally. And I think it's over on both sides.
Yeah. And so my gut tells me that it will be a trade, and it would probably be the Raiders, which I think is where you feel like he would be best fit to. Like, the Jets is a good fit. I just don't know that he wants to follow Brett Favre's footsteps anymore.
Yeah, I think he's done with that. I think if it's not Vegas, that he seriously considers retirement.
And I think the only places that he would consider going are places where he thinks that he has an option to go to the Super Bowl within a year. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that the Raiders are necessarily there. With him, it makes a big difference, because I don't think that they have to do a whole lot on offense to make that team better, other than fixing the quarterback situation that Derek Carr is left. They can really focus on defense, and if they're able to bring the defense up to average, above average, then that could theoretically be a scary team to threaten out there in the AFC.
Well, they got pass rushers. They need to work on their secondary, but I think that is the only option that makes sense. The Jets were very good this year. Their defense was fantastic. I just don't see Aaron as a New York guy. He's a West Coast guy. He's very calm, chill guy, and I don't think the New York market vibes with what he wants, because that does matter to him. The outside of football life is a huge part of what Aaron Rodgers, I think, will take into consideration.
Yeah. And like I said, my gut says that that's what he's going to want to do. My heart wants him to just fucking retire.
Yeah.
Not even because I don't want him in the league anymore, which is still the case, but my, irreverent Packer hater mentality is, if he retires, the Packers lose their quarterback. They are forced to move on to Jordan Love. They get nothing in return other than some cap relief. And we know that Packers don't normally go out in free agency and spend with their cap. And even if they want to, the biggest draw for players to go to Green Bay is the fact that Aaron Rodgers is there, and he's typically going to keep their offense always, and that team always in the game, always in a hunt for an NFC championship, except for this year. But when you remove that draw, and I mean, it was still the same thing when Brett Favre was there. So you remove that, what is the identity of that team anymore? You don't really have one. Why are players going to want to go up to Green Bay, which is a very, very small market? I mean, Green Bay is not a big town. It is not a place that people are like, oh, I want to go live there, because it is cold, shitty tundra. You've got cheese curds and fat chicks. And it's like, what else? I mean, if you're a hunter,
take it easy on the cheese curds. Take it easy. Love those.
I love cheese curds, but you can get them other places.
Culver's.
Yeah. Either way, that's my hope, is that he's like, I just want to retire. I want to be blitzed out of my mind on DMT and Coke and my weed pen all the time. And, he can just keep doing his McAfee show thing or golf or whatever he wants to do. That's my hope. I feel like he's going to be like, no, I want to keep on collecting this money and, being a bad teammate, just go somewhere else doing it. But we'll see. Again, I'm hoping that within like the next 2 to 3 days, a week at most, that he has made his decision and determination on what he's going to do. So that way we can start seeing how things are going to shape out for that team and potentially his future team. And the scouting combine is when a lot of those things start to really take place and start rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I do want to ask about another quarterback. We haven't really talked about this guy too much, Derek Carr. And he worked his situation masterfully, in my opinion. He would not take a trade. He said, there is no team in the world that you can trade me to that I will accept.
Well, Derek Carr held the cards, and he worked it like he should. I mean, does he have the same agent as Kirk Cousins? Because Cousins,
that I don't know. I'd have to.
has worked his shit out masterfully, getting him fully guaranteed deals and all that. I mean, the way that Carr and his agents are working this is perfect because the Raiders made it very clear you're not playing here anymore. We're moving on from you. And he being able to come out and say, yeah, I'm not going to take a trade anywhere. That gives him all the power.
Yeah, and it did because he was
all the power.
Subsequently released, and he is now a free agent. And what do you think is the best fit for Derek Carr? I know how I think his best fit is, but I want to hear what your best fit for Derek Carr going forward is, because what he did was beautifully executed because now he controls his future.
I guess the low-hanging fruit is the Jets to me, because the Jets already have a very solid defense. They've got a lot of good offensive skill players. They've invested a lot in the offensive line. They just need a competent passer. I mean, if you look at what they did there, no discredit to Mike White, because I like Mike White, but he's still probably a high-tier backup in the NFL.
Right.
You put a competent quarterback in there, and I know there's an argument about whether or not Carr is competent, but I mean, if you're going 2 seasons ago, he was in MVP talks, right? So we know that he's got that capability. You put him out there on that team, and I think they are a fringe playoff team this last year. You bring him on, and they're immediately a playoff team to me. And I don't know what better option there is for that out there. I mean, there's going to be Tampa Bay, the Saints, Carolina. I suppose you could talk about the Washington Commanders and stuff like that, but I don't know that any of those teams are as close to being competitive as the Jets already are. So if he's wanting to get paid, which he's going to get regardless, and go to a situation where he can jump right onto a playoff team, I feel like that's the best one. But I might be missing some places.
For me, the smartest place for him to go, a team that was very good, just recently made the playoffs, lose a Hall of Fame quarterback that's still got plenty of weapons. It's Tampa Bay, man, for me. I know people are like really high on the Saints, and I don't know why. If you have the Saints and the Bucks matched up against each other, player for player, I would take the Bucks, at least for me, because they're going to have the option to bring in some other guys. They're taking Tom Brady's cap off there. Derek Carr's is, I mean, very similar, a little higher than Tom's was, but to me, that makes the most sense. I don't know if he's going to want to follow in Tom's footsteps, because that is a tough ask to do, but I think Tampa Bay is one of the best fits because it gives him so many weapons on the offensive side of the ball. They need to work on offensive line. This is a good year to need offensive linemen again. So I feel like that might be the spot that if I'm Derek Carr, that's probably where I'm looking.
I would be scared a little bit if I was Carr going to Tampa Bay, though, because let's be real. If Danny Dimes is asking for $40-45 million a year, Carr is going to easily be worth that if this is the new ecosystem for quarterbacks, right? Right now, the Buccaneers have the worst cap situation in the NFL. They are currently $57 million over the cap. They are not going to have the same roster going in.
That's very true.
They are aging. They're an aging team. And so they're going to have some hard decisions and turnover there just to get cap compliant. And then if you're talking about adding on a contract the size of a Derek Carr contract, it could be difficult. And if Carr is looking at it from that perspective, is like one way or another, he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
But if they're having to sacrifice so much to bring him on, and already having to sacrifice just because of their current situation, they might not be as competitive as they're really hoping for. And I mean, it's not like they're not going to be in a great situation next year either. I believe that they right now are already projected to only have, what is it, like another $7 million in cap next year, unless, you know, some of these contracts change. So that's, I wouldn't mind, like in my head, I could see him playing there for sure. But I don't know that they're going to be able to maintain the competitiveness. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about Derek Carr. Do we want to move into some prospects, or do we want to talk about some of these coaches, the final hirings of coaches? Because there were some interesting things that came out in some of these press conferences. Like Adam Gase-esque fucking press conference.
I say let's leave the prospects for people to watch towards the end of the show, because again, we're looking a little bit back in time at some of the stuff. So the coach hirings to me is interesting for sure. We have all of our head coaches out there now.
Yep.
They've already been determined. So I was Sean Payton going to the Broncos, and he's built a pretty good looking squad out there as far as coaches underneath him. They just signed Lombardi, who recently was fired from his offensive coordinator position for the Chargers. And I thought that they were like, I think Lombardi's an okay offensive coordinator. Like, I like him. Sean Payton's obviously going to have his finger on that big time. And then they brought Vance Joseph in from the Cardinals. They had, interviewed Rex Ryan, which I felt like would have been more interesting. Vance Joseph has not always put together the best defenses. They also
he's put together really good defenses or really not great defenses. I don't know. There's been a middle ground with Vance.
Right. So it's going to be interesting. At least he's walking into a situation where they already have a really good defense. Sean Desai, I thought would have been a good fit there, but just because he's been talked about so much as being, very smart with defensive systems and whatnot. He pulled himself out of consideration for a Minnesota job because I think he thought that he was going to get a look there in Denver, and ended up not happening. Obviously, they were looking at Brian Flores as well, and Brian Flores ended up not doing that. Ended up going to my Vikings, which I'm very, very happy about, even if it's going to be only a short-term deal. Because honestly, if he takes the Vikings defense from 31st in the league like they were this year and makes them closer to average, 25th or something like that, like that's still a good mark on his resume, and he's probably going to get looked at as a head coach again next year. Who else? We already talked about Reich going to Carolina.
Yeah,
and they also are building a very good coaching staff out there. They got McCown as their quarterback coach or something like that.
Who I really like. I love Josh McCown, man. Like, he did a great job here in Cleveland. He was a quarterback coach down in, New Orleans, I want to say. But he's been around the league for a long time. He's a guy that you bring in when he was a player, you bring him in as a mentor to young guys, and he's going to be able to transition right into the role of quarterback coach beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Josh McCown, quarterback coach. They got Dom Capers to come in as the senior defensive assistant, not the DC. Deuce Staley was pulled from the Lions to be the assistant head coach and running backs coach, and I loved what Deuce did up there in Detroit. Jim Caldwell is coming in as a senior assistant as well.
I love Jim Caldwell too, man. Like he got a raw deal in Detroit.
Yep. And then you have Ajiro Evero, who I was very high on as a defensive coordinator candidate. He jumped ship right away when the Broncos released him from his contract and went and signed on there to be the DC in Carolina. So the defensive side of the ball definitely looks set. And then the offensive side of the ball, I like some of the pieces that they have there. I think Frank Reich is considered a quarterback whisperer for the most part. And you've got McCown there as well. They're in a situation where they have to go out and get a quarterback, probably get one very high in the draft. And it's a good situation as a rookie quarterback going in there with those sorts of mentors and teachers. So it's a good situation for that Carolina team, especially better than what they've had the past several years.
All right. Where else do we want to go? We had a couple more things I thought we wanted to talk about, and I just can't fucking remember what the hell.
Yeah, well, so we can talk about our teams, the Brownies and the Vikings, and what we're hoping to see from them in this offseason. Some of this, like for my team, there's going to have to be a lot of tough decisions on veterans, guys that I've watched for the past 5-10 years that I really, really like, that are just going to end up having to go because they've aged out, cap considerations, things like that. And then also I've got one question about, the draft before we get into the players and your thoughts on that as well. So which would you like to talk about first?
Let's go with the Vikings, then we'll go with the Browns, and then we'll roll into some of the players.
All right. So my Vikings, we're going to have to get rid of some players. They just had a situation. Dalvin Tomlinson is our probably top interior defensive lineman. His contract was set to void along with Patrick Peterson. Peterson's contract did void because they have void years added on. Dalvin's, they agreed to wait until the 15th, I believe, to actually have it void, to try to avoid taking on like a $7 or $8 million cap hit of dead money for him, because we really do want to retain him. If he ends up hitting the market, he's going to be, I believe, one of the top 3 interior defensive linemen who will be out there as a free agent. If we lose him, we don't really have any replacement on the team. And so I expect we'll come to a deal with him. He'll get paid pretty well. He's been very productive for us. He's nothing like explosive splash, but he's just super consistent, super solid for us there in the interior. But other than that, some of the veterans that are getting talked about being moved, like I brought up earlier, Dalvin Cook, you probably could look at trading him, but I think that his value, I said 3 or 3rd round to 5th round pick, it's probably leaning a little bit more towards the latter, towards like a 5th round pick for him, which right now the Vikings have 4 picks in the draft, 5 if you add in the expected compensatory pick. We need more youth on this team. We need more speed, and the draft is going to be definitely a way to go about that. So getting more picks, even in those later rounds, is going to make a big difference. You've got Zadarius Smith. Last year, we brought him in on a 2-year deal. The first year paid him very little, like $4 million, and it had an easy opt-out this year. If we release him, I could bring up Spot Track on here, but I believe it's like a $12 million cap savings without like incurring dead money. And so Zadarius was very, very good for us through like 9 games. And then he got a knee contusion. And after that, he was kind of not to be seen. That was, I'm looking at, the Vikings are probably going to look at moving on from Zadarius. Adam Thielen, he's going to be the 2nd highest paid player on the Vikings if he sticks with us this year.
And that won't happen.
Behind Kirk Cousins. I love Adam Thielen. I love his story. Went to the same college as me. UDFA, plays for his hometown team, and was phenomenal for years. You know, it was Batman and Robin. It was Diggs and Thielen. And Thielen is just, he's slower. He's getting injured more often. This year, we saw his production drop again to the point that our wide receiver 3, KJ Osborne, and him look a lot alike. If anything, KJ brings a little bit more because he's faster and he's younger and he's way cheaper. So if you're looking at getting rid of a guy, it would be Adam Thielen. That one, I don't think you're able to trade him for anything more than a 7th round pick, maybe a 6th to a wide receiver desperate team. But the problem in trading him, other than his age, which I believe he's 33, 34 now, is that cap hit. He's due $18 million this year, which is way too much for a guy like that. And he's come out and said that he's not, like, he thinks that he can still play. He doesn't really want to talk about negotiating down, which means if we cut him, that would be a post June 1st cut. And I believe that saves like 12 mil on the cap for a post June 1st cut. Harrison Smith has been talked about. Now Harrison's getting up there in age, but he is still very productive. He's not the Harrison of 5 years ago, but he's still probably top 5, top 10 in the league as far as safeties, and he fits extremely well into Brian Flores' scheme. Harrison Smith was always a great center fielder, but he's been Harry the Hitman. He is known for coming down in the line, being in the box, rushing, things like that, and that's what Flores is known for, his schemes. I think that that's the guy that they're actually going to look at possibly restructuring his deal a little bit to save some money, and I think Harrison would be fine with that. Like, he's not going to take a huge discount, but I believe that he understands where he's at in his career and that he's able to stick with his team, be really good in the system, take a little bit of a discount. They'll probably convert Brian O'Neill, our right tackle, some of his salary. It's an easy conversion. We don't even have to get it authorized by him to save about $7 or $8 million cap.
Over to a signing bonus.
Yeah. And then some of the other guys that have been talked about, Daniil Hunter, he's going to be playing on the last year of his deal. I think that we re-sign him, restructure him to a little bit longer deal, which will provide a little bit of cap savings. And then one of the bigger talks is inside linebacker. So Jordan Hicks was a guy that we picked up last year, 2-year deal. We can drop him and earn about $4 million cap. He was just way too slow. Like, he got burned constantly. And the other guy is Eric Kendricks, another guy who I really love. He's such a solid inside linebacker. He's good in zone coverage. He's lost his step. He's 31 years old now. Same as Bobby Wagner, who was just mutually agreed to be released from the Rams. He did not work well in that 3-4 scheme that was being run by Donatello last year. He's a guy that I would really think that my gut tells me we're going to keep him, Kendricks, but I could see us moving on if need be, if he's not willing to restructure, because I think that he still has some value on the team, especially in the Flores system. I just don't know if they'll be able to come to terms on numbers for like a rework contract, because he's getting paid too much right now for the level of production that he's putting out, which will leave us with one inside linebacker, Brian Asamoah, a earlier pick for us last year, who looked very exciting. He's a very much so a boomer bust rocket type of player in the middle. But that'll push us in the draft to possibly be looking for more inside linebacker help. And then there's some guys that are tied to Flores who could be brought in. And then the last guy that I think that we could really move on from, and it hurts as well because he's another hometown guy, played at Concordia in Minneapolis, is our fullback, CJ Ham. I love me some Ham. He's a great kid, great team player. We just don't use fullback.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the way your offense is trending, you don't necessarily need to retain a fullback on the roster.
He's a good special teams player. He's a good complement on offense, but he's just not. Fullback isn't part of the offense, and getting rid of him saves $4 million immediately. And so it just makes sense when we have to get cap compliant. Those moves all together. If we talk about, excuse me, post June 1st with Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Zadarius, the restructure Brian O'Neill, Jordan Hicks, Ham, that gets us to about $18 million under the cap, which allows us to go outside our draft picks and still go after some free agents, which,
I think a couple guys there.
I think that they look at like a Byron Murphy for cornerback. You're not talking about Jamel Dean, like the top corner that's going to be available this year. I don't think that there's a lot of push for us to go out and try to trade for Jalen Ramsey. Don't want to do it. He's trending a little bit downwards. He's very expensive still. I think $18 million a year. I think we can get one of those more mid-tier guys that is a good starter, still younger. Murphy's coming off of his first contract. He's not like fantastic, but he's decent. He's solid. We can put him out there. He can play the game. And then we really I want us to focus hardcore on the trenches, specifically on defense in this offseason. We're going to need another wide receiver to complement Jefferson. I think we can do that through the draft. And there's a lot of really good number 2 style receivers out there, or fringe 3 to 2 wide receivers in the draft. We'll have to figure out the running back situation. But other than that, defensive line, we need multiple guys on the defensive line. We're going to need more edge help, more interior guys. So that's really where I want our team to focus in this offseason, is building that defensive core in the trenches. And then we're going to have to figure something out at center, because either Garrett Bradbury comes back, who he had a good year, an average year last year after being terrible for his first couple of years in the league. I would personally like to go after someone else there, but that needs a little bit of work. Other than that, I mean, I feel like the team, after a 13-win season, we're a deeper playoff running team if you have a defense. I think Brian Flores' addition with the current players that we have bumps our defense up already. If we're able to add a little bit more life on the defense and then make the offense a little more multiple by adding just a more confident receiver than Thielen, we're talking about, I don't expect us to get 13 wins again next season. We have a very tough schedule, but that still keeps us very competitive in the hunt for the North. So defensive minded and the trenches is my offseason outlook for the Vikings.
All right. So the Browns are going to be in a weird spot, man. There's going to be a ton of turnover on this team. We've seen some turnover in the coaching staff, which I'm very happy with. But the addition of Schwartz as our D coordinator is going to really kind of change the way that this defense is shaped. I expect to see a lot more man coverage. So I'll start with the cornerback position. Like, we have really good guys. Denzel Ward is a stud. Did not play nearly as well as we've seen him play in the past this last year, but we had some other guys in, like a Greg Newsome, who was very, very good for us, but he kind of got slid down into the slot role this year. and he did not like it. With the emergence of Emerson out at the other outside corner, what do we do with a Newsome? We still have a fucking Greedy Williams on the team. Like, we have 4 guys that are really good, or that have the ability to be pretty damn good in our back end, but I don't know if we can retain all of those guys and have them play kind of out of position, because Greg Newsome is not a slot corner. He's just not. He's an outside guy. But so is Emerson, and so is Denzel Ward. Who do we get rid of? It's not Denzel. Emerson had a great year as a rookie corner. He was probably the 3rd best rookie corner in the entire league. So you got to
over
think
the 2 Seattle guys and the 2 rookies in Seattle, and
so Sauce.
our
He's
boy
not
Sauce.
better than Sauce. God, I just forgot the kid's name from Seattle. The one who
There's Tariq Woolen, and I can't think of the other guy's name.
Tariq Woolen. He's not better than him, but Emerson is right there in that number 3 conversation for best rookie corners. He was fantastic. So the back end is going to get some shakeup, in addition to the fact that I don't expect us to retain John Johnson III.
And Greedy Williams.
Greedy, I think there's
maybe
a trade. Oh yeah, Greedy is a free agent this year. I thought he had one more year.
I believe he's a free agent. I know he's been talked about in Viking circles as one of those kind of mid-level cornerbacks who didn't have the success that was expected, but he's going to be coming off of his first contract. So I think that he's supposed to be a free agent.
So Greedy might be a free agent, and if so, I don't think we'll rotate him. If we do, it'll be Emerson. If we keep 3 of these guys, it's going to be Newsome, Emerson, and Ward. Greedy won't be back around, but I don't know if we can convince Newsome to go back and play in the slot again. There may be a trade there, but we're also going to be looking for new safeties. My pick for sure is I want Jesse Bates, because I don't think John Johnson will come back. I don't think he wants to come back. And I don't think the Browns necessarily want him back either, especially I think they saved $7 million in the cap with a post-June 1 cut. So the back end is going to be drastically different. There's still going to be a few staples there, but we're going to see a big shakeup there. But we're going to see a big push at the linebacker and D-line position with Schwartz in there as the D coordinator. We're going to need some bigger, more stout guys in the middle of that defensive line to help out our linebackers, because our linebackers are lean. I love Joke. He just doesn't necessarily profile exactly what Schwartz wants, but I think he is a very valuable piece, and I would be very upset if they were to even consider trading him until they can see him at least a year in Schwartz's system, see how he produces. So our defensive side of the ball is going to be big change. We're going to look for D-line, some probably more stout linebackers, and we got to find another edge guy. Jadeveon Clowney's definitely not coming back. He didn't want to come back. We don't fucking want him back either. So we got to find another edge opposite of Myles Garrett who can help generate some pressure. And we don't have a first-round pick to do so. So we're looking in the 2nd, 3rd round for an edge rusher who can really help that D-line go. There's a couple of guys that I'd like. I don't know if they'll still be around, but on the offensive side of the ball, we have some question marks there as well. We need another receiver. We need a guy who can take the top off. We don't have one. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a great jump ball guy, but he's not necessarily a burner who's going to blow past people and be able to take top off a defense. And I love Amari Cooper, but he's not that guy either. Amari Cooper is a route runner. He is able to move the sticks, but he's not necessarily explosive. So we're going to be in the market to get a wide receiver as well. I don't know if we go draft there. I would prefer that we look in the free agent or a trade market, because there are going to be some guys that are available via trade. I think Tyler Lockett might be on the trade block, and if he is, that's the guy I want. Corey Davis is another guy that I would consider. I think could be very productive with this team. But we also got to work on this offensive line. The offensive line is fantastic outside of left tackle and center. Our left tackle situation, we're going to bring Jed back on a 5th-year option. That's definitely happening. It might have already been announced that it has happened, but we don't have anybody who can step in right now and replace him at left tackle. So he'll be back. But we're also looking at the center position, because Ethan Pochich was great, but he is a free agent. There's been some conversations that maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. He's shown some interest. We've shown some interest, but not enough. And we have Nick Harris coming off of a season-ending injury. So if we're not bringing Pochich back, then all the eggs are in the one basket on Nick Harris, and that's not going to work. We're going to have to go out and we're going to look at guys in the draft. I got a couple guys. I was able to join the Barking Brown show. Jacob, was it last night or no?
Thursday,
Friday night. I had the bump back to Friday. We talked about some center prospects. There are some guys that I do like, but Andrew Berry has these guardrails that he just doesn't really operate outside of. He doesn't draft players if they're 23 and over because the age. I understand it, but I also think that maybe sometimes that we're losing out on prospects that could really be impact guys because of that age guardrail.
A good question too with that is that we are seeing in this draft more guys come out in that 23 age range because of the COVID opt-out year.
Right.
And so the age maybe matters a little less there because you're not talking about as much wear and tear in the body as you would. It's only 1 year less, but
I mean, we will see. We will see what happens after this year if those guardrails get extended a little bit to include the age of 23. But Andrew Berry's never drafted a guy who's age 23 and older in any fucking round. He's never done it. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. There's only 3 centers in this draft who fall in those guardrails, and they're all kind of. I like some of them. I like some of them a little bit more. But the guy I really like is outside the guardrail. So can we find a way to marry these things up? It's going to be an interesting offseason. I will be hard pressed to be excited until I see what happens after the draft and what we can do in the free agency / trade market, because we don't have a first round guy. We're not going to have him for a while, based on prior decisions to bring in Deshaun Watson. So we're going to have to find gems. And I don't know if there's a ton of gems. That to me, this draft feels very top heavy in certain positions.
See, I feel a little differently.
See, the receiver class is not as good.
If we're talking about this draft, I feel like your top 10 to 15 picks are where the heaviness is in the first round. And 3 to 4 of those guys are going to end up being quarterbacks.
Right.
But then you get into the later part of the first. I really feel like this draft is rounds 2 through almost 5.
See, and for me, because this is such a quarterback heavy draft, a lot of guys that maybe should go higher won't go, and they're going to get shuffled down the board a little bit. We're going to see some guys tumble. I think your big playmakers in this draft are going to be rounds 1 and 2, and you might find a couple guys here and there sprinkled without. I mean, that happens a lot, that the mid-round guys don't necessarily pan out the way you'd hope. If you need a D line, this is a great year to need D line. This is a really good year to need offensive linemen.
Some of the draft stuff that I've been watching on YouTube, a lot of the thought process is that we're seeing a different draft landscape, and it's a meld of 2 things happening. NIL deals, which are keeping guys in college that normally would come out, and the guys getting the NIL deals are the guys who would be typically the first, second round talent. That guys are opting to stay an extra year for NIL to get that guaranteed money, and the COVID year stuff, which is changing where and what years guys would be drafted, and it's making them a little bit older, which is changing some of the thought process.
Well, and we talked with Deja at the beginning of the show. She is a senior, listed on the Cleveland State Athletics page as a junior because of the COVID year. So
She's an academic senior.
Academic senior, college eligibility junior. So that is going to be a thing because of the COVID year, and it's all aspects of sport. So
that's why some of the pundits are saying, like, you're seeing more guys that they're talented, they're starters in the NFL, but they aren't necessarily high end starters from a draft perspective, and that's why it feels like your higher middle rounds are getting a little bit more flooded with like pretty solid talent, but they're not guys that you would consider first round talent. So I feel like the first round is always going to be flashy because those players are going to be built up, but that we're actually going to see more of a mundane draft, but guys, you're going to see a lot of role players being taken and guys that are going to be solid for your team in those middle rounds. That's why I feel like it's a little bit more mid-heavy. Like the top end of that first round feels good, and then it goes into guys that have a lot more question marks that are still going to get taken in the first round because of high potential, but maybe a lower floor. And then that middle round is going to be with a lot of guys who are not great at any one thing, but they're going to be solid.
See, and I feel like the quarterback, the quarterback class is just so good that we're going to see guys that we think are higher tumble down because we're going to see some teams probably reach at quarterback.
And that's quarterback for me. We're talking about 3 to 4 guys that are really good. And then after that,
well, so
really
I got 3 guys for sure that I like. The 4th guy, you're still going to have to try to convince me on. I like his athletic ability, but I have some question marks. But I can easily see 4, maybe even a 5th guy climb up late and go in the first round just so they can get that 5th year option. You're talking five quarterbacks in the first round. You're going to see some talent tumble into the second.
So I mean, we don't need to do a deep dive into it, but we're talking top 3 guys: CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Bryce Young. 4th guy, Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
He's going to go first round. I don't have any doubt about that. And I think that he is about to fucking blow it up at the combine. And it's going to
He's going to test. He's going to test really fucking well. I have no doubts in my mind that this guy is going to test off the charts. Now, I'm going to say this, but these are 2 very different players, 2 very different. I am not making a direct comparison. He's going to test as well as our guy, Zach Wilson, if not better than Zach did. He's going to look.
I think he tests way better.
He's going to look fantastic. I am not comparing AR-15 to Zach Wilson, though. They are not the same. I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to make that comparison. That is not what I'm saying, because I was so far off of Zach Wilson. I am intrigued by AR-15, but I'm not there. I'm not sold. He reminds me a lot of a Lamar in the things that he can do and the lack of some of the things that he can do.
All right. Then when we're talking about, so those are our top 4. The 5th guys that I traditionally see are Hendon Hooker and McKee out of Stanford. Now, McKee in Stanford's offense, he looks like, to me, a Kirk Cousins clone. Mm-hmm. Stanford does not have a passing offense. They don't have big name receivers other than Michael Wilson, who's continually injured. He's an interesting prospect in the draft this year. Looked phenomenal at the Senior Bowl. When he played, he looked phenomenal. He just constantly hurt. He's only had like 14 actual college starts. And then Hendon Hooker, if Hendon Hooker
we're healthy
2 or 3 years younger and didn't have the ACL tear, he's a lock in as a first round pick in my mind.
Yeah. He's got that kind of talent. He's older and he's coming off
25 years old and coming off an ACL. You're not going to get anything out of him this year. So if you draft him, he's going to be 26 2 years from now when you might start to get use out of him. That's the problem with Hendon Hooker. Now, teams still might take a shot on either one of those guys. I'm seeing McKee sometimes, more often, McKee going late first round.
I think that is probably the case. I think somebody will climb up to 31 and maybe go draft a McKee late just so you can get the 5th round option. The Ravens did a fantastic job doing that with Lamar. I mean, I don't think it's going to work out in the long run based on some of the reports that are coming out, but I could see a 5th guy coming in there that leaves 26 other guys in a draft that is very good on the defensive line and has really good offensive line talent as well. I don't know if the offensive line is getting necessarily the same amount of love that I'm giving them, but I really like this offensive line class. When you're talking about guard, center, I'm kind of meh, but
yeah. So I guess with that, so my last question before we kind of get into some of these players is concerning the draft, specifically number 1 overall pick with the Bears. What do you think happens? There's a lot of talks of them trading back or trading their quarterback.
That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know that they trade back. I think it is a mistake to trade their quarterback and go and get a new guy just so the new GM can say, "Oh, this is my guy." I fucking hate that. It drives me insane. But I think that's where they're going to go. And I think the perfect trade partner is right in my division with the Ravens because I expect Lamar Jackson to not be there.
Okay. Do you think that means Lamar goes to Chicago?
I believe that Lamar will be traded prior to the draft, and he will not be part of the deal that sends him back out to Chicago.
Okay. Because I'm actually on the train of, if I was the Bears GM, I think that I would move Justin Fields, and it's not because I want my guy. It's because I think that right now, Bryce Young is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. Now, here's the argument for keeping Justin Fields. Halfway through last season, his second year in the NFL, was when he hit his 18-game mark. So his first full season of playing NFL football theoretically came halfway through last year as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked bad up to that point. And then the second half of the year, you actually saw the progression in him. You saw a little bit more out of his arm, but he's still not a competent, great passer yet. But as far as a running quarterback and running that offense, really good. And he's making the right decisions as well. He's just making them too slow.
Yeah.
We've seen this from Fields in the past. In college, it was the same thing where he was kind of slower to develop, but by the end of his time, especially there at Ohio State, he was looking really good.
Yeah,
right?
he threw to open guys. He didn't necessarily throw guys open.
Mm-hmm. So you're hoping to see that same train of development, and I think that right now his top end is a bargain bin style of Jalen Hurts play. That's what I see out of Justin Fields. Which, if you get that, that's phenomenal. But you're still gambling on whether or not it's going to happen. Justin Fields, again, to his credit, is playing behind a bad offensive line without any offensive weapons.
Yeah.
And he's still making plays and looking really good, and was great for like fantasy and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's what you can necessarily bank your team on going forward. If Bryce Young was 3 inches taller, there's no question he's the number 1 overall pick in this draft. And I still think that he's worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. It's just his height and his weight is something
he's
that
so
we have not
fucking
seen.
little for a quarterback.
You're talking, Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson are the easy comps because they're both smaller quarterbacks. Kyler Murray,
but they're big. Those are bigger body guys.
Sure, but Kyler, I'm out on. I don't like, but he
we were talking about this
being
before
an average
the year
guy.
even started.
Yeah, I'm kind of out on, but Russell Wilson is that shooting star that you're going for as far as small quarterbacks. I think that Bryce Young, again, right now comes in the league and is better than a lot of quarterbacks out there. And I think that he goes in day 1 for the Bears and is better than Justin Fields at this current spot. That's how high I am on Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young has a ceiling, and it is a very good ceiling, but I don't think he has the highest ceiling in this draft as far as quarterback. And I think you know where I'm going with that, with the little Anthony Richardson action. But yeah, I think that day 1 he comes in, he's a better quarterback. You get longer time with Bryce Young to develop that team. The Bears, I'm not saying they tanked last year, but the way that they worked their contracts, that was Ryan Poles coming in and saying, we are fixing this cap situation. We are moving on from guys. It's going to hurt. This is going to hurt a lot, but they have a lot of draft capital returned to them. And they have a lot of cap room where they can really start a very quick rebuild if they hit on some of these spots. You could trade back, keep Justin Fields. You could trade back to 4 and still get yourself one of the 2 top defensive linemen in Jalen Carter, or I'm blanking on the second guy here, Will Anderson Jr. You can get one of those 2 guys, and I think Jalen Carter makes more sense for him in the middle because finding that interior defensive guy is pretty tough. But quarterback's the most important position on the field. I think that you can move Justin Fields, be it this year or next year, theoretically, if they want to run with Justin Fields this year and give Bryce a year while this team is in rebuild mode.
Yeah, but
You can still
Justin
move
Fields is not
forward.
going to be. He's not a mentor. He doesn't have enough time to.
No. I'm not looking
bring
at
Bryce along, and
I'm not looking at him as a mentorship role. I'm looking at it as, hey, we don't know what this offense is going to be this season, and the quarterback is very possibly going to get pummeled a lot more. Maybe let's not put our prize horse out there in Bryce Young yet. Let Justin Fields do what he's going to do. If he gets hurt, that really sucks. But if he doesn't, and he still looks like he's on the same progression path, we can trade him, get at least a second, if not a first-round pick for the type of talent that he is. Or you could do that this year. I think that he garners probably a late first type of round pick. I don't know anyone in the late first round that would go for him necessarily.
Ravens.
Maybe the Ravens. But I think if you're looking at the money comparison of how much money you'll end up saving from having that rookie quarterback, I think that the overall lifespan of these two quarterbacks, Bryce Young will be a better quarterback. And you don't get an opportunity to go after that sort of talent very often. So my thought is that if I was a GM, I would try to move Justin Fields. I would take Bryce Young 1 overall and try to rebuild that way. That's just me personally. I think that there is hype going around the league of this happening, and I honestly don't think it's going to happen. I think that they will stick with Justin Fields as their quarterback, and I think that they will probably look to move with someone in those first 5 picks.
Yeah, I could the Colts. I think the Colts makes the most sense if you're going to have a trade partner to move up. It's going to be the Colts, so they can go out.
And I think that Bryce Young on the Colts looks really good, but their GM and their owner are not short quarterback guys. You're talking about those guardrails. They like the bigger guy, which makes a Stroud or a Levis make a lot more sense.
Yeah. I like Levis. I know a lot of people they do not like Levis. I do like his ability. I struggled a little bit this year with turnovers, but he was also banged up. Like, you can go back and look at Will Levis last year. He was fantastic. He was good this year. Took dips in numbers. His rushing numbers were abysmal this year compared to the year prior, but he has ability to get out of the pocket and can make basically all throws because he's got a fucking cannon for an arm. Decision-making is still questionable, but we've seen, questionable decision-making guys go very, very high. I mean, fucking Jameis Winston, number one. Like, those guys had turnover problems in college, and then one of them turned out to be a really good NFL quarterback, and one of them is still trying to figure out if he's an NFL quarterback. So I like Levis. I love Stroud. I don't know how he profiles at the next level.
It's unfortunate because we hear a lot of, rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins talk with him. But I do feel like they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
And Dwayne Haskins' career did not turn out great, before his untimely, death. But I like Stroud, but I think that he has a low floor or a high floor, low ceiling on him. Honestly, yeah. I think he's a safer quarterback, but not necessarily one that's going to.
I think he's probably the most pro. I think he's the most pro-ready guy in Stroud, but I don't know that if he is going to elevate much more than what he is. I think Levis, there's room to grow. Also, I think is potentially pro-ready. I think Bryce Young is not there yet, man. And this is just me being the old school NFL guy, but the height and the slenderness worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I get that. If I don't look at that, honestly, Alabama did not have like great receiving core or anything last year. They obviously have a good offensive line. They have decent runners. With what he was working with, I thought he just looked really special. Like, his anticipation, his accuracy, his arm strength is just all there. And it's just a question of that height and size. And it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for some teams.
Well, you brought up the one thing.
There's a boon.
Yeah.
Of that.
You brought up the one thing that I hate about AR-15 is the anticipation. Doesn't throw with it.
So yeah. So we're going to talk about some guys to pay attention to going into this.
Yeah. Let's talk about those. We don't want to dive too far into the quarterbacks because we're gonna take away from.
Well, we will with one of them for me.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. I know you got guys you want to talk about. I got a couple guys that I want to talk about today as well.
Sure.
So let's start with you.
All right. So I limited this down to 5 guys for like kind of draft crushes, not necessarily just for my Vikings, but guys that I really like going in this draft. And sure, some of them I would like my Vikings to go after. As a matter of fact, I would take all of them. And I'll throw out other names after this. I won't break them down by any means, but guys' names that you can write down if you want, or watch this back and then pay attention to kind of where they go through the draft or through this combine and stuff. The first guy I'm going to go over here is a wide receiver out of Tennessee, and he's not the main guy that people are talking about, Jalen Hyatt. It is Cedric Tillman. All right. So Cedric Tillman, redshirt senior from Tennessee. He was injured this year. He had an okay season, but he was injured, did not have the seasons that he did before. He is 22 years old right now. He is one of the only bigger body receivers in this draft. He's 6'3", 215, and he's being profiled as a 2nd to 3rd round type of pick. The guy reminds me of a mix, and this is, I know, a bit of a jump. If I had to do a 1-for-1 comparison to an NFL player, I would say Marcus Colston. Marcus Colston, former receiver for the Saints. He came out as like a tight end wide receiver hybrid. And not to, I've got my little bit of a launch board here. Marcus Colston, one of the most underrated, I believe, wide receivers to play. People, I don't know if you know this, but he has never been a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro, Marcus Colston. All right. Despite 9 years in the NFL. And he is the Saints all-time franchise leader in receiving yards from scrimmage, receiving touchdowns, and total receptions. Basically the best wide receiver to play for the Saints statistically. Never made a Pro Bowl, never an All-Pro. Wow. But he's one of those bigger body guys. And also not necessarily
from Tennessee as well, I believe.
Hofstra.
Oh, okay.
Hofstra. Pick 252. Colson was one of my favorite receivers back in the day. But Tillman is kind of that type of guy. He is not an overly athletic type of dude, but he's a big body guy. He's a high contested catch rate type of guy. So his numbers in 2022, he only played 6 games. He, had 37 receptions on 59 targets for 417 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not great numbers, but he didn't play a ton. All right. If we go back a year, 2021, he played 13 games. He had 64 receptions, 1,081 yards, averaged 16.9 yards per reception, and had 12 touchdowns. He's the big body possession type of receiver. He's a bit of a bully. He's great at run blocking. So he's kind of that do everything type of guy. But his advanced stats, like from 2021, his contested catch rate was incredible. Like he was your contested catch type of guy. Like I said, if I have to compare him to one player, I feel like Marcus Colston. If I had to compare him of a blend of 2 players, I would say that he's a Dollar Tree, Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas mix. He is okay as a route runner. He could work on that, but he is super solid possession guy. He is great in that mid to intermediate type of range where you're talking 10 to 15 yards. I really like his game a lot. And he's a guy that you can get at a discount because he was injured this last year. That's really his only injury concern. But because last year he wasn't the premier receiver on that team because he was hurt, he's dropped in the draft, where before he's probably, if you're talking him coming out in 2021, he's a first round receiving talent. So he's one of the big guys that I'm very high on.
All right. So I'm going to go with my first guy, a guy that I hated in college, but not because of his play, because of the team that he played for, Michigan Wolverine, the center, Oluwatimi. I was going through breaking down centers over this last week, getting ready for the show with Jacob, and this guy just does exactly what I need out of a center, especially if I'm running like a inside zone blocking scheme. He is really good at the point of attack. He can dig a guy out. He's good in pass pro. He went up against really good talent in the Big Ten. He was fucking dominant against a very good defensive line for Ohio State. That guy profiles as a starter, in my opinion, right away for any team that drafts him in the middle of your offensive line. and you can get this guy probably second, third round. I think there's only going to be one center that even has the potential to go in the first round. A guy I know that you love, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about here in a minute. But Oluwatimi, in my opinion, is probably the second best center in this class, and is a great get for the Browns in that second, third round range, depending on if we go edge and then or somewhere. It just depends on how they want to do it. I don't necessarily want to draft a receiver in this class if I can't get one in the first round. I want to go and continue to build my O line and my D line with our first pick. But if I can get Oluwatimi sliding down to the third round, I'm absolutely taking him. He's exactly what I want out of a center.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of his as well as like more the mid-round type of guy, but I think he ends up being a plug-and-play type starter for most teams. Yeah. Second guy, it is tough not to compare this guy to another player who went to his school for the Pittsburgh Panthers. I'm talking about Aaron Donald of old, because these guys are very similar, but Calijah Kancey is a interior defensive lineman, undersized. He is going to be 6 foot if he wears his wedges. He's listed at 6 foot 280. But the guy is just a very, very athletic. Like, he looks like a clone of Aaron Donald coming out of Pittsburgh, which is scary because you don't normally want to say, oh, Donald went to Pittsburgh, they look alike, it's going to be the same type of production. I don't think that he will be an Aaron Donald, but I think that that's his North Star. Calijah Kancey is an insane interior defensive lineman. He fits in as kind of that defensive end on a 3-4 or a penetrating 3 tech in a 4-3. He can move all around, and he's just been nothing but production, especially over the past 2 years. He had 8 sacks this year, 9 sacks last year. The film on him is scary on how good he is. It's just, can he produce that at the NFL level? That was always the fear with Aaron Donald, and people were willing to take that shot on him earlier on in the draft. Right now, he's being projected anywhere from like the middle of the first round to late first round. I've never seen him drop into the second round in most of the mock drafts that I've seen, because he's that talented. It's just, you're again talking about a size issue with this guy, and can he produce? You know, it's rare that you see someone like an Aaron Donald at his size come out and be what he is. And how high Kancey is going to go is going to really be based on this combine. And is he the athletic freak like Donald was? And he has a lot of those athletic freak type of moves and stuff. So he's going to be a really interesting guy. I think that someone is going to get him in the late first round, and it's going to be looked at as a steal in years going forward.
All right, so I'm actually going to stick kind of along with that theme for another guy that I like. Profiles as a DN, D-line. He's kind of one of those similar penetrating 3 techniques. I don't know that he is great out on the edge. Struggles to bend the edge a little bit, but very good inside. And I'm going to mess this man's name up, and I apologize. It's Tuli Tuipulotu, or out of USC. Tuli is I'm going to call him. Very similar to the guy you just talked about. Absolute force. Had 13 sacks this year at USC, playing in the Pac-12, which is, good football. It's not great football, but it's good football. He's just so good. Transition from speed to power. Struggles with the flexibility a little bit, which I think is why they profile him a little bit more on the interior, like a 3 tech. He could be a D end in a 3-4, but just has the ability to convert speed to power and can really get after a passer. I think this guy is going to be special, but because of some of those knocks, he's looking to probably slide down into the second, third round potentially. If he slides to the third, anybody that gets him is getting an absolute fucking steal. Second round, I think, is where this guy belongs. And I, as a Browns fan, this is a guy that I would love to see line up in that Schwartz defense, because you can kick him out if you need to. You can slide him into a 3 technique. He'll eat up space. He can also rush the passer. So that's another guy that I am all in on. I think he's going to be really, really special.
All right. So second guy for me is a running back, and I've actually got a lot of running backs that I really like in this draft. I mean, obviously Bijan and Jamar Gibbs are the 2 guys that get talked about the most. And I I think I told you about him, and I said I wasn't going to add him to one of my 5, but I am at this point. This is a guy that is important to me because he is a guy who played at my high school. He was our star running back, ended up going to Northwestern. Evan Hull, who is a dual threat type of receiver and runner at running back. He went to the Senior Bowl and was one of the best looking running backs at the Senior Bowl. Before the Senior Bowl, he was being talked as a 6th round to undrafted free agent type of guy. I think that his floor is now, especially after the combine, if he tests well, is going to be the 6th round. There's some talk of him going as high as the 4th round. His film looks so damn good that I'm surprised that he's not being looked at more. I watched several cut-ups of him, and I was really surprised with the type of player that he is. He's not going to burn you or anything like that, but he has got that elusiveness and ability to change direction, which is really fun to watch. Some stats here for you, though. 2021, he had 220 rushing attempts, 914 yards, 4.2 yard average, which is pretty good. But as a receiver, he had 54 receptions for 536 yards. The guy to me is your true kind of, he can do either run the ball or receive the ball. Receiving the ball is where he seemed really special to me, though. He was really good in the screen game, the flats, and those little undercuts in the middle. Was really, really good there. And they played a particular type of offense there at Northwestern that didn't focus on running the ball as much, and he was still able to almost put up 1,000 yards this year. Last year, on 196 rushes, he had over 1,000 yards, 1,009 yards, 5.1 yard average, and he still had 33 receptions for 264 yards. So he's still putting up really good receiving numbers and good rushing numbers. He's that good kind of dual option there. He reminded me a little bit of a Rex Burkhead as his low end, or his high end being almost more like a Matt Forte. I don't think he's going to be Matt Forte, but Matt Forte was able to do both things very well. And this year he had 5 rushing touchdowns. Last year, 7 rushing touchdowns. So he's able to, put the ball in the end zone. Good compliment. And when we're talking about one of those complimentary backs that is able to be taken late in the draft and put into a system where he's not expected to carry the full load, Evan Hull, I think, fits in perfectly with a lot of teams, especially because on third down, he's not a liability. He's a decent blocker, but a really good receiver. So I really like him. And of course, being a Maple Grove Crimson guy,
right.
I'm going to be following his path going forward.
Okay. I mean, so don't get me wrong. I like a Rex Burkhead comp because they can do so many things. They're just, running back is going to be tough, man. There's so many talented guys. Bijan is obviously an absolute fucking stud. It'll be interesting to see how this draft shakes out, because there's going to be some running backs potentially on the market. You were just talking about Dalvin earlier. Like, does somebody go out, trade for Dalvin, or do they say, no, we're going to stand pat and we'll go get one of these kids? But that'll take me to the last guy that I'm going to talk about. Sorry, I was trying to pull up his stuff here because I didn't have it quite ready. But Kayshon Boutte, or I think that's how you say his name, Boutte out of LSU.
The wide receiver?
Yeah, the wide receiver. I like this
kid. He's an interesting one.
I like this kid. Struggled with a little bit of injuries this year. Has the ability to absolutely take the top off of defense. Decent little route runner. There's some room to grow for him as a route runner, but I think he has the potential to really kind of take that next step. He's not a big guy, 6 foot tall, but just is a solid guy. Put up decent numbers this year, just with not great quarterback play. He wasn't the leading receiver for the LSU Tigers, but I think there are some
48 receptions for 538 yards this year. With 2 TDs, but that he's one of those guys, and I don't mean to completely steal this from him, but
no, go ahead.
It is an interesting name because coming out into college, he was expected to be like the next big wide receiver, right? And he just never fully developed. And part of that is the situation at LSU, and like you said, some injuries and stuff like that. He's still shown to be a competent receiver. People are, he's getting, especially in fan mock drafts, he's getting drafted a lot higher than what some of the pundits are having him as being like that, like 5th, 6th round type of guy. Some people were taking him as high as 2nd and 3rd round based on his potential that he just never got to really experience there at LSU. So he's a really interesting guy that a lot of people are keeping their eye on, trying to see what he looks like here at the combine, because if he starts testing out the roof, then that's going to definitely rise his stock some.
Yeah, so he kind of reminds me of a Donovan Peoples-Jones in that aspect, is that Donovan Peoples-Jones was one of the most highly recruited wide receivers coming out of high school when he went to Michigan, and had decent production at Michigan, just nothing super, super impressive. And he's been a pretty decent wide receiver in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns. And he is in that same vein of highly recruited guy, got stuck playing behind some obviously fantastic NFL talent at LSU. And then when he really has a chance to shine, the quarterback play is just not there. So I think there's the potential for him to grow as a receiver and really kind of turn all that potential into something special.
All right. Next guy, someone that we've kind of alluded to, center from Minnesota, a Gopher, easily considered the top center in this draft, John Michael Schmitz, who I absolutely love. This guy, he has been talked about a little bit more recently as being able to creep into the first round. Centers is a devalued position. It's viewed as someone that you can get round 2 through 6 and possibly find yourself a starter. And we've seen some of that in recent drafts.
Only 6 centers were drafted last year. Only 6 of them. The only positions that had less people drafted were fullback, kicker, punter, and long snapper. And that's because nobody fucking drafts fullbacks, kickers, punters, or long snappers. So they're very devalued.
Yeah. But this guy is your prototypical everything you want from a center. He's mean. He's aggressive. He's not like old boy that went to the Saints where he's fighting people in the Senior Bowl or whatever.
The walking hold, Trevor Pennington, who didn't fucking hardly play this year.
But Schmitz, he's the guy that if you watch the Senior Bowl practices, he's the type of guy that is fighting aggressively with the guys that he's going up against, and then they blow the whistle, and he'll make sure that he gets that last push in. Like, he's that aggressive. Like, he's like, I'm not going to be the one to end this rep or to not end this rep. Like, he's going to do that every time. And game in, game out, so fucking phenomenal at the job that he's doing, whether it is scheme diverse,
he's a fucking massive human being.
Yes.
You do not see center. He's what, 330?
He's 6'4", 320 as of right now, listed on his profile. He can play any of the interior positions, by the way. Like, he is the center, but I think steps in at either guard spot and plays any of them beautifully.
With the ability to pull at his size as well, because he moves fucking fantastic.
Yes. And through his college career, he allowed a total of 2 sacks. In 3 years, 2 sacks. All right. So that's this year, 767 offensive snaps. Last year, 837. And his first year in 2020, only in 6 games, because it's condensed year, COVID, only 422 offensive snaps. So we're talking almost 1,900 offensive snaps and only allowing 2 sacks. It's phenomenal. To me, and this is, again, maybe a bit of jump for some people, but he feels like as good of an offensive line prospect as a center as Quentin Nelson did as a guard. All right. To me, that's the type of player that you're going to get from him. Right now, on average, his average draft position is around 50. And I expect that to rise. He's going to look phenomenal here at the combine.
He's going to put up fucking 35 reps at least on the bench, I think.
If you want yourself a starting center plug and play right away, he's the guy. I could see him going in the first round with the how much of a lock that he basically is as a center. But because it's devalued, he's considered a second round guy. So he's a guy that I'm really excited to watch as well. I would love to find a way for the Vikings to get him. Again, this would take the Vikings trading back out of the first round. We don't have a second round pick right now, so which I'm fine with. I think that we need to gather draft capital. And so trading back, finding our way in the second and taking him with a second round pick, I would be perfectly happy with. I'm not going to complain at all.
Yeah. I mean, I love JMS. You guys heard last year, I crushed over Tyler Linderbaum because he was such a clean prospect coming out of college. I mean, we saw Creed Humphreys go in the second round, who is the gold standard of an NFL center right now. This kid is in that same vein, in my opinion. He is a fucking stud. Somebody's going to get somebody really good to anchor their offensive line for a long ass time. That kid is special.
Yeah. All right. And then I know, you didn't have anyone else really to
No,
go
go
over
ahead.
here,
Go
but
run your last one, bud.
my last guy, and he's someone that I'm definitely crushing on, that I think he's going to light up this combine, is Anthony Richardson at quarterback. I think he has the highest ceiling of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. Anthony Richardson, AR-15. He is 6'4", 232, and he moves like a running back that is way smaller than his size. His numbers aren't going to wow you when you look at that. He had 175 completions on 330 throws this year. That's a 53% completion percentage. That's pretty damn low, right? 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, not the best touchdown to interception ratio. I'll say this is that I have been focusing on a lot of these quarterbacks, and the one that jumps off the screen for me through all the breakdowns is Richardson. And especially when you go into that quarterback school YouTube page, if you look at what's being talked about with him, he has all the tools that you want. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's got great awareness in the pocket, great mobility. He's able to run the ball super well. The question mark is his accuracy. When he's throwing on schedule as the play is run, his accuracy is actually really good. His accuracy off schedule is not great, and it's a mechanical thing. The quarterback coaches in these videos that I've watched have all basically said the same thing. This guy has unlimited potential. He's got a Mahomes-esque style of play. He's got some comparisons to a Josh Allen, because Josh Allen came out with accuracy issues, and most of those, not all of them, obviously, as we saw this year, were fixed being under a quarterback coach and a coach like Dable. And we saw what Dable was able to do with Daniel Jones up there in New York. They're talking about how he doesn't set his feet correct, and some of those mechanical issues when he is kind of off schedule, off script. This year was his first year playing as a starter, only 12 games. So he's got an extremely limited resume in college, extremely limited coaches. And he did not, again, just like a Justin Fields in Chicago, he didn't have talent there at Florida offensively. Like, he had some decent offensive linemen, but he didn't have anyone else to work with. And he was still able to make some really, like, if you put on the film, some of the plays that he's making are really special. They're talking about his mechanics being the main issue, but that he's able to read a defense really well. Especially, it was a simple offense in Florida, but he's able to read well. He's making decisions well. It's just he didn't have the mechanics to go along with it, or the players around him to go with it. And that kind of, the world is his oyster. If you are able to put him in a competent system, not play him right away, the guy is a minimum 1 year away from being able to step on the football field and do anything for you. And that's why, if you like, right now he's getting mocked anywhere, from pick 10 down to like pick 6. Like,
I've seen him as high as 1 on a couple of mocks, which I don't get, but
I don't think that's the right thing unless you get a team that's moving up there that already has a quarterback in place and you want to play Anthony Richardson 2 years from now. He could fall as far as maybe 19, I think, which is Tampa Bay. But again, he's probably playing right away there.
I would imagine he would.
Him, if he were to fall to 18, that Detroit would take him because he's able to sit behind Goff for a little bit. To me, if he falls anywhere past 14 and I'm the Vikings, I'm trading up stuff from this year's draft and next year to go after him and not extending Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins has 1 year left on his deal. He's able to sit behind Kirk Cousins, learn a competent brand of football behind a very good offensive coach in O'Connell. And I think that he has that potential to reach a Josh Allen level of play in 2 to 3 years. I think that even if he sits this year, plays next year, that he's going to have a rough first year like Josh Allen did, but that the sky's the limit for him. He's so raw and so undercoached, but he has all these physical talents that you can't teach people. The stuff that he needs to get better at is stuff that you get taught. The mechanics, the running this professional style offense. That's why I'm so intrigued by him, because a lot of these guys we're already seeing, in your CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, you've seen them for a couple of years in an offense. You've seen them grow and have that growth. You've seen the physical talents that they have or don't have. And they've had really competent coaches with decent surrounding pieces around them, and they've been able to be good. You haven't been able to see that yet with Richardson, and he seems like the guy that is the most athletically talented out of this quarterback group, has that highest ceiling in my view, and it's just if you are willing or have the capability to sit him for a year or two, I think you could find a very, very high-end quarterback out of him. So to me, like, it's tough for me to make a good comparison because no one wants to say he's the next Mahomes or he's the next Josh Allen or he's the next Lamar Jackson. I think that his floor is Lamar Jackson as far as being mobile and being a bit of a runner. I don't think he's as dynamic as Lamar can be as a runner, but
No.
he could be on the ground what a Jalen Hurts or a Justin Fields is. And if you're able to figure out that arm stuff with the mechanics, then he can work himself into that Josh Allen style arena of a passer. And on a rookie quarterback, rookie wage scale, that's something that you can set your franchise forward big time. And it's something that my Vikings haven't invested in fucking forever.
So I agree with the rookie wage scale thing, but like you said, this guy is not pro ready. He is not. He is so raw. He is physically the most talented guy in this draft. I don't think there's any question with the things that he can do athletically. He needs time, right? And like I said earlier, his throwing with anticipation is just, it's not there. I have tried to watch as much Anthony Richardson as I can, and it's just not there. He misses some reads because he escapes too early. That is one of the things that worries me, is that he's just going to become a runner and an athlete, and he's not going to be a quarterback.
And the stuff that I've seen with that escaping too early is, again, these are former professional quarterbacks and stuff like that, breaking down some of the film. They're saying, like, you can see him looking at the correct spot that he should be throwing it, and he's not, because that receiver, he hasn't had that option where these guys aren't getting open where they should be. And so he hasn't had the opportunity to really do that. And I know that's drawing a line that we can't say for sure, like, oh yes, obviously he knows what to do, but he's not doing it. He's going to take off just because he doesn't have the talent around him.
Because we can watch the tape, but we don't know what the read is. We don't know the call. We don't know the read. But
supposedly from Senior Bowl stuff, or not Senior Bowl, I think it was Shrine Bowl. He's done some interviews and stuff like that. And apparently he's interviewed extremely well. Like, his understanding of an NFL style offense and how to play quarterback, the head part apparently is there. It's just a question of, was it really the talent around him, or is he just going to force himself into these runs as much as, we're seeing him run in college? I will say this though, if you take him, again, not a starter.
You cannot start this kid right away. You cannot do it, because you will set him up for failure and your team, because he is not pro ready.
What I've heard is that
I have a really hard time taking a quarterback in the first round that I know is not even close to being pro ready. Like, you can take a guy, you're like, I think this guy is going to make it, but I don't know if anybody turns on the tape and says, AR-15 is my starter day one. And if your GM or your talent evaluators are saying that, I have very serious questions about your ability to evaluate talent, because he's not ready.
If you're in one of those situations where you can let him sit, I mean, Mahomes is a good comp in that respect. He had a lot of questions coming out of college. He had all these physical talents and was making some incredible throws, but he had some questions about his mechanics and things like that. He still ended up going 15th, and no one's going to bat an eye for the Chiefs for doing that, especially when they had an Alex Smith waiting, playing pretty well there. But if you're willing to put the time in on this guy, it could be a really big get for you. And I'll say this, is that in year one, you can still get use out of him, because on schedule plays, on design plays, especially goal line or short yardage, the guy's a killer in RPO. Obviously, if you get him goal line, he can make this little short dink and dunk passes for guys that are schemed open. That's not going to be a problem, especially with NFL talent. But he has the ability to run the ball very well. So if you have, again, it's easy for me to put myself in this situation as a Kirk Cousins fan, but if you go down and you're at the 3-yard line or the 2-yard line, and you put AR in instead of Kirk Cousins, it gives you vastly more options, where you're not having to talk about like some sort of insane read of the defense. It's like you have a couple, 2-3 guys doing specific routes that one of them hopefully is schemed open. If he's not, you take off at the ball, and you probably are getting a touchdown from this guy, just the way that he can run the ball. So in an RPO style offense or something like that, early on, just year one, you can still use him as a gadget style quarterback.
Okay.
So I think there's some value there still.
So we're similar in the fact that we know that this guy cannot start right away. He's got to be drafted in the right situation. He's got to sit. I have a hard time saying I'm going to take this because I've seen him drafted or mocked as high as 1. I can't even take him in the top 10 because I know I'm not going to get anything out of him right away. At least I believe that I don't know. I don't believe that I can get anything out of him right away. So I have a hard time investing that in a guy that high because I don't know if I've seen a mock where he's less than 10.
It's very rare. There's been a couple recently where he's gone as late as the lowest I've seen him in recent
Detroit,
months,
right?
is 18.
Probably.
Detroit.
Yeah,
because Detroit has 2 first-round picks. They're I believe.
Yeah, they do. But I've also seen the same. I've seen drafts where he is mocked to Detroit, but not at 18, where he's mocked at 7 or wherever the hell they're at.
Detroit's at 6 from the Rams for that the trade for Stafford, and also picking at 18. So yeah, I'm not seeing Detroit taking him that early at 6. But if he were to fall past and get to 18, then I'm seeing him taking him in those drafts.
So
but again,
that
like
would make sense to me because I know I don't have to play him because I have Goff. That makes sense, and I'm still adding talent to my team because I have 2 first-round picks. But right now, I'm gonna have to go back and watch some more. I'm gonna have to see what he does at the combine. Pro day, honestly, pro days mean nothing to me for a quarterback. I think they're fucking worthless. You know what happens at pro days? You get guys like Zach Wilson who get drafted in fucking second.
Yeah.
When they
I'm
absolutely
expecting
should
to
not
see
be.
him go out and run the 40, 4.5 or sub 4.5.
I would be willing to bet he's probably 4.4s.
He's going to be a athletic freak, and it'll be really interesting to see what it is like in that sort of a sterile environment for him to throw. That'll be telling for a lot of people because the question is his accuracy, and it's believed that the accuracy issues are coming from mechanics. So on the on schedule stuff, he seems to do pretty well. But yeah, I think that he's going to, because of how he performs at the combine, I only see his stock going up. And so yeah, top 10 pick probably. To me, if he falls out of that top 10, that's when I want my Vikings to be like, okay, well, Kirk Cousins is going to cost us $40+ million a year if we keep on extending him. Let's bite the bullet. We'll trade next year's first, this year's first, and probably some change. Maybe one of those players that we want to get rid of, a Dalvin Cook or an Adam Thielen or something like that. We'll throw some extra stuff in there. We get sooner or later, you got to bite the bullet. You got to move, because I don't know that the Vikings are going to be selecting. Like next year is looking to be a good quarterback draft again. We're not going to be selecting high enough to take one of these guys. We have to do something to move up. I don't think the Vikings are going to be a bottom 10 team in the league for the next several years. So if you ever want to get out from under Kirk Cousins and his contract, you have to make one of these really risky moves. And sooner or later, between KOC and Kwesi, they have to make their mark on the quarterback spot. That's going to define their tenure there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways to do it. If he starts to fall at all, to me, make a move for him and go get him.
All right. So we had a couple comments throughout the show. Beautiful dog sitting in the back there, or was. I'm not sure if he's still there. Oh, there he is.
Beth is still sitting there chilling.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to misgender. So producer Amber, are we going to talk about Jake Paul? I'm not sure what
Jake Paul and Tyson Fury are fighting tonight.
Oh, they are fighting tonight. I am surprised that is actually happening. I was not certain. I hope Jake Paul beats the fuck out of Fury. And I don't even like Jake Paul. But the fact that Fury is pulled out of this fight on a couple of different occasions, it hasn't been at any of the goddamn press conferences. I hope Jake Paul absolutely starches him. And that's weird for me to say. Tommy Fury.
I've wanted to see Jake Paul go down, so I'm just going to keep riding that.
Yeah.
I just don't care who it is at this point.
Torres says we got to bite the bullet. The Colts are definitely going to find a way to bite the bullet. They're going to get a quarterback this year.
Yeah.
But all right, man. We got anything else that we want to go over before we get the hell out of here?
No, not really. I guess there's the other couple. We didn't really go over it with the head coaching hires, but we had Shane Steichen going to the Colts, Gannon going to the Cardinals. How do you feel about those guys?
Steichen, I think, is a decent hire. The Cardinals are in such a bad spot, man. I don't
hate
know
Gannon.
how that's going to work. I don't know how any of that's going to work.
I hate Gannon. Okay, as a defensive coordinator, like that defense was loaded with talent. If you have a bad defense in Philly, you fucked up as a coach. So Gannon was a guy that we interviewed for the Vikings head coaching position last year, and so I remember doing a little bit more deep dive on him then, and I hated him. Him coming to the Cardinals, I don't like it. I feel like this is like his chance to become a head coach for 1 to 3 years tops, because I don't think he's going to be successful there. I do not like him as a coordinator. I don't like him as a head coach. I think it's a big L for the Cardinals.
Yeah, the Cardinals are in a bad fucking spot.
Steichen, I don't have a problem with him. I really like him as an offensive coordinator. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. I don't know how he'll be as a head coach, but I do like him as a coordinator. So at least that should help the offense a little bit. Torres has asked us a question here. Who should the Colts pick for quarterback? Look, if you can move up to 1 and get Bryce Young, I really like it. I think Bryce Young is the best plug and play, like lowest or highest floor type of guy. Like I said, I think that he's better than Justin Fields right now. I think that he's probably top 15 to 20 quarterback coming in right now, if you can get over the size of how he is. If you're not going with him, to me, I guess it's a toss-up.
They're taking Will Levis. If they don't move up, they're taking Will Levis.
And that's the thing is Levis, to me, I think has more upside than Stroud. So that's where I would go there.
Yeah.
But,
all right, man.
All right. Other than that, I don't know. I got anything else really.
Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm gonna fucking piss my pants. So.
All right.
Guys, this is the Lineman Lounge. Thank you very much for tuning in. Shout out Deja Williams for joining the show. It was awesome for her to be on. We're going to be back every week for the foreseeable future. We're breaking down all of the shit going on in the NFL. Combine this week. Free agency is approaching, but we are always going to be back. Baseball is also starting to kick off. We got spring training going on. Baseball season is not far away. I cannot wait to dive into baseball season. But we are going to be back next week. If you want to interact with the show, go to Twitter at Lineman Lounge. We got Facebook group. We got a ton of shit posted on there like every day. Evo is a madman when it comes to posting memes and stuff on the Facebook. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and you can listen to us anywhere podcasts are found. We'll be back next week. We love you. We appreciate you. See you.
Welcome to the Lineman Lounge, hosted by Mike and Evo, calling their shots and being outlandish.
Breaking news from Lineman Lounge. My fantasy football team just took a huge fucking hit. And that also makes it even more likely that the Raiders are going to beat the Ravens on Monday night. Le'Veon Bell is about to be your starter. Latavius Murray is going to go there as well. Jesus, fuck my ass.
Get ready for the thickest podcast in the game. Coming to you from Hangar 6, where sleeves are optional.